Good morning, and thank you everybody for being here with us. This Tuolumne County Board of Supervisors meeting, January 14th, 2025. I celebrated my 33rd birthday yesterday and appreciate it. And at 33, I finally appreciated no parties, no going out, just staying at home, watching Knives Out, Glass Onion, having a beer. It was great. It's fantastic. Really appreciate, again, everybody being here. We're going to open it up with the Pledge of Allegiance. And not according to hand of time, but will my vice chair be willing to lead us in the pledge?
Please rise. Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Great. So we will jump next into our oral communications as boards. We value everybody being able to attend and speak before our board. This is your time to let us know anything that is not on our agenda. Be able to speak to us for 3 minutes on that. Always encourage 2. Sometimes 3 minutes is a little short. You can email or call us or let us know through other formats if you got more. So for any items not on the agenda, you want to please line up and address the board.
Good morning. Congratulations to Supervisors Holland and Griefer, and welcome. My name is Mike, and I run a small prayer group in Courthouse Park before each of these meetings to pray for the meeting and our county, and I try to come in here as often as possible and pray as well. I'm not a pastor or anything. I'm just a guy who trusts in God and Jesus, and I believe in the power of prayer. But I do not trust you. In fact, I don't trust anyone in this room, even myself, especially myself, because I know how human I am, and as a human, we have a tendency to mess things up. We are prone to distractions, deceptions, temptations, and confusion, which often cause us to err. So I pray for myself, my wife, my family, and my friends, and like you, I love my county. It's our home, so why wouldn't I pray for it too? I do thank you for doing what I refuse to do, and I'm not even capable of, which is running for office and representing the people of this county. You are living out what our representative form of government is meant to be, and I am truly grateful for that. You are suddenly expected to be experts in the fields of education, transportation, building and development, roads, mental, physical, and behavioral health, business, fire prevention and protection, law enforcement, insurance, finance, law, and appeasement. You're tasked with trying to make everyone happy. You will make some bad decisions and some good decisions. You'll vote on things that seem extremely significant but will end up being meaningless. And other things that seem meaningless might just end up being the most significant things you ever do. You'll need to seek counsel from many in your life. Not just experienced county employees, but wise people from all aspects of your life. And I'm hoping that you'll seek counsel from God as well. All these things are easy to him. And if you lean on him, I promise that your job will be a lot easier. Father in heaven, I thank you so much for Supervisors Griefer and Holland and their willingness to represent us. I pray for your discernment, your wisdom, and your guidance for them. I also pray that you will surround them with county employees and others in their lives who will offer sound and truthful advice. Keep any deception, resentment, confusion, and corruption away from them. Help us all with our trust, Lord, especially me. Help me to trust others and to trust myself because I know that I trust in you. Thank you, God, for all you do for us. Please bless this meeting with efficiency and effectiveness. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Thank you.
Good morning to the Tuolumne County Board of Supervisors. My name is John Flynn. I'm your political watchdog. Take a bite out of crap. Okay, enough with that. Okay, I would like to bring, to the cattle ranchers in Tuolumne County, there's a guy named Ron Eckerson. He has a property up on Evergreen Road, December 17th. He was here at the boardroom in the afternoon at 1:30. Item number 2, I need his home phone number. Please contact Dave Tichenall. Get me that phone number. He'll call him and he'll call me. I got to get a hold of him. He hired a lawyer to represent him in common law jury, the 7th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. The county is trying to do eminent domain. It's illegal. And I mean, they can do that, but they have no immunity. You don't. Government immunity. In Land versus Dollar 338 U.S. 731, 1947, the court noted that when the government entered into a commercial field of activity, it left immunity behind. Then you have Brady versus Roosevelt 317 U.S. 575, 1943, same thing. So now I got to go on to the other subject. There's Ryan Campbell's wife is a judge. She's presiding on a case that involves John Henchman, who lives at 16400 Highway 120 Big Oak Flat.
John, really quick, and I'm going to pause so you have the time as well. I want to make sure that all the comments for the public, you're allowed to speak to anything that you would like, but it's within the germanity of what we actually can do as a county. I would prefer, and I'm asking, to please not address family members of the board or criminal cases and things that have
You're going to restate my minute?
So,
Are you going to reinstate that?
yeah, we can give the time back. I don't want to take any of the time that you had, so.
Reinstate it then.
Are we able to program, I believe it was 10 seconds back?
But you talked more than 10 seconds.
We paused the clock. Yeah.
Okay.
That works fine, and that's a request as chair. I appreciate it if you're not talking about any of our family.
Well, it's going to involve a lawsuits coming. You don't have immunity on this one. Nobody does, except that these two guys over here, the new guys, they're not involved. And then you threw me off completely. You shouldn't have done that. Okay, and then the person who's representing John Henchman and Benjamin Barno and his girlfriend Glenda Lahonti, and they're going to be served an eviction notice tomorrow morning at 6:01 a.m. and by the Sheriff Adkaz or Neil Evans, undersheriff, and there's been some burglaries on the property by somebody else, and John Henchman called the sheriff not once but twice, and Sheriff Adkaz blew him off. And that's a violation. He said he would help out on March 5th when he was sheriff. He would help anybody out. He didn't do that because there's gold mines on the property, a lot of gold mines. And that's what's going on here. They're trying to get everybody off the property. And John Henchman is in the hospital, right? Shoulder up. He's a hard rock miner with jackhammers. And he knows about the gold mines on this property. And everybody wants a piece of his wife, period. Okay, is a judge. She's presiding on this. There's a lot of corruption going on. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Hello. My name is Julie Duckett, and good morning to the board, and thank you for your commitment in serving the public of Tuolumne County. This is the first time I've spoken to the board, but I felt really fired up this morning on my way here in the car, and now I'm pretty nervous, so I don't have any notes. But I wanted to come and speak about the proposed pellet plant down in Jamestown. I do think we need new industry in Jamestown. I don't think that's a bad section to choose, actually, for industry. But I'm concerned that there's a company from Great Britain called, escapes me now because I'm nervous, TPAC, something like that, DPAC. They have set up in Great Britain a company that produces very large pellets to burn for electricity. And when I first heard about this plant, I thought, well, that sounds like a pretty good idea. But when I looked into what biomass really was, I thought it was the undergrowth of what we have in our forest. But biomass actually refers to the trees we have in our forest. And I do realize that we have to, fight wildland fires, and we need to thin our forests, and I get that. I just think that the wood could be better used in building homes rather than burning them in Asia and in Great Britain. And that's what they're doing on the East Coast. They're sending them to Great Britain, and on the West Coast, they're trying to put one in Lassen County and here in our rural county to send to Asia, not just China, but other countries, I believe, because the articles when I went, I did research this on the internet, and it opened my eyes to what was really happening. And pellets are actually worse than burning coal. And I was surprised to learn that because I thought they might be cleaner. So I'm hoping that the board takes a good look at this, because I don't think 10 years ago, this might have been something to consider. But now with climate change and the pollution that will come from manufacturing the pellets in Jamestown, that pollution will come up to our foothills and our mountains, and the pollution that will be produced in China when they burn these pellets for electricity. That this is being proposed as clean energy, but it really isn't clean energy. And I'm all for clean energy. I'm all for maintaining the forest and sustaining the forest. But I just want you to know that I'm only one person, I'm only one vote, but I felt so strong about this particular issue that I want to come down and talk to you about it today and ask you to please do more research about these pellets, the manufacturing of them, and then the burning of them at the end point. And in between those points too, the transportation.
And that's the 3
Transportation
minutes.
pollution.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And only as a technical clarification on that, so that is a proposed project to the county from an entity, GSNR, and we could assist maybe in helping you connect and find their contact form to ask any questions, but it has not entered the county planning land use process yet. So it would be coming before Planning Commission, the board, at a future date. That's very common with these projects, that they start and then work kind of towards the end. Anyway, there would be when it was reviewed by those entities, so thank you.
Good morning, Board of Supervisors. Cassandra Jenicky speaking to you today as a member of the Children's Holiday Party Planning Committee. In our 42nd year, 2024, we held the party on December 14th at the fairgrounds. Children and families in need are identified by the Tuolumne County Superintendent of Schools and our local agencies, and children and their families are invited to this party to ensure that our Tuolumne County children receive the holiday season that they deserve. This year, we served 620 children, and over 1,000 people attended the party. We, in the last year, raised over $25,000, and our Bikes for Tykes program provided 100 new, 45 refurbished bikes, and then 25 skateboards, and have no fear, every one of our kiddos also received a helmet. Your Tuolumne County departments also participate in this event. So the District Attorney Victim Witness Program provides a cookie decorating booth. The library provided over 487 books that were provided to our families and kiddos for free. The Sheriff's Office provides an incredible jail work crew and the community patrol to keep us all in line on the day of the party. And our key community supporters include the Sonora Area Foundation, the ladies and the men of the Moose, Tuolumne County Genealogy Society, all of our local Rotary groups, so Sonora, Sunrise, Twain Harte, Infant Child Enrichment Services, the WATCH program, and we also received a lot of human volunteer donations this year. So Oak Valley Community Bank provided us with a variety of their employees as volunteers, and then it's nice because our Somerville and Sonora leaders are here in the room today because both of their leadership programs, despite the fact that the party happened on the exact same weekend, as the thing we're here to celebrate, the championship games. Both of those schools provided over 15 students for us on Friday and Saturday to provide a variety of services, including but not limited to some very creative face painting. And then people helping me run around like a chicken with my head cut off, keeping everything together. And so we're very grateful to everybody that made this party a success this year. And if you ever want any more information about that, I would be happy to offer it. So Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Thank you. And Jen, good morning.
Good morning, Chair Brandon, Board of Supervisors. I'm Jen Lopez, Marketing Manager at Visit Tuolumne County. And this morning I'm going to share with you a couple of campaigns that we currently have running, this being our slower time of the year right after the holidays here. We don't have a lot of snow, which we're hoping for very, very soon. But these two campaigns are in the spirit of bolstering business here in Tuolumne County, throughout the county, and they both are relevant to both visitors and residents of the county as well. So the first one is the Fuel Your Journey campaign. We started this one last January and ran it into February. This is a gas card giveaway where if individuals were to book a new reservation in a Visit Tuolumne County partner lodging property for the month of January and stay in the month of January, they would receive a complimentary gas card. So gas cards are $75 for midweek stay, $50 for weekend stays, minus Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday weekend. And so last year we gave away about $1,500 in these gas cards through this campaign. They were all purchased at gas stations locally. And so we feel this is a great way for people to be incentivized to come up and stay a couple nights. It is only good for at least 2 night stays. The second campaign is Snap and Savor Photo Contest, and this is in the spirit of California Restaurant Month, which is happening now. And this is, like it says, a photo contest where diners can go out to their favorite restaurants or try new restaurants, out to wineries, distilleries, so forth, and snap pictures of their meals and beverages and be entered into a social media contest. So trying to really get people out into the restaurants and our other beverage outlets as well. I would just like to let you know that we do have a February marketing meeting. We have marketing meetings every other month, and we invite everybody to come to these. This is an opportunity to hear about updates from Visit Tuolumne County and also from other business owners around the area as well, and to share marketing ideas. That is coming up on February 20th at 1 p.m. Either in our headquarters. You can come to the meeting itself, or it's available on Zoom as well. And lastly, I would just like to mention that we have a lot of information in our newsletters that go out to business owners, to all of you, and it has a lot of information about other business and economic ways that our lodging and hospitality, our tourism partners can partner with us. Thank you.
Thanks, Jen. Good morning.
Good morning. So tomorrow is National Pothole Day, and since we talk about it a lot, it's a time when people can think about the expense and cost and damage that potholes do and report to their local leaders and ask them to do something about it. We've had a local pastor and his wife who lost their son to suicide last week. He left behind a wife and 2 children. So please keep in mind that suicide prevention efforts are still very much needed in our community. Our local McDonald's here in Sonora is going to have a new manager at the end of January. So hopefully we'll see some changes there. And then I have some concerns about some county programs. So they come out to Courthouse Park and they blow the leaves out of the park, but they blow them into the city streets. So that is not how we rid ourselves of green waste, by turning it into someone else's problem. Because then they go and they clog the storm drains in Sonora and then we have flooding. So I think that's pretty rude. We have a maintenance yard in Jamestown, And there's apparently a spot where they bring all their sand in and pour it there. But when they do that, they cover a manhole for the Jamestown Sanitary District. And then if the sanitary district needs to check that, they have to go and dig themselves out of the sand hole to get to their manhole. So I also think that's pretty rude, and the county ought to think about how not creating work for other people. Then the Jamestown Sanitary District is having their public meeting tonight to talk about their sewer fees. And I think we might actually be able to get something done tonight. But at the last public meeting they had, the public behaved so horribly and they were nasty. So the staff was afraid. I was kind of afraid. So they called the sheriff's department to see if there could be an officer there tonight. So the sheriff's department is apparently going to charge for this service at almost $95 an hour. So I looked at the sheriff fees that came out in July, and there is nothing on there about requesting that the public pay for their public safety service. So I have some significant concern about that. And then in the library, when they repaved the parking lot there, the parking spaces are so tiny that even if people park correctly, sometimes you're stuck not being able to open the doors at your vehicle. And we need to do something about that, in my opinion. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, do we have any other public comments? I know we had a couple people walk into the room. We're under 3-minute, not on the agenda, public comment period. No pressure.
It's good to see you all. It's been a while. I wasn't actually planning to leave a comment. I came in to drop off a application to apply to be on the hearing board for the Tuolumne Air Pollution Control District. And something I've not talked about in previous meetings is that I have been keeping track of a cloud seeding operation that's been happening over all of our heads for the last 30 years with an outdated environmental impact report. I've tested over 20 rain samples of my rainwater with an accredited lab and found elevated amounts of aluminum, titanium, barium, strontium, magnesium. So I look forward to hopefully serving on the board and addressing these matters because I was informed that the board was not notified of this ongoing operation for the Turlock and Modesto Irrigation District. And also, California's been sprayed with adulticides, and I want to keep my eyes on, our county and protect our air quality, because when you learn about the active ingredient in the adulticides they're spraying, it's highly neurotoxic for everybody. So anyway, just wanted to say hi, and that's why I'm here, and have a beautiful day.
Thank you. All right. About to close public comment. 3, 2, 1. All right. Thank you, everybody, for, again, coming to our board, taking time out of your day to speak on any of the things that are on your mind. We do appreciate it's your time. So with that, we'll move into staff reports. Any members of the staff like to come up? I'd ask, we do have some public folks in the meeting, too. We all have pretty much monthlies with most of you folks, too. If we can get a brief update, would be fantastic. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, board. Happy New Year. Robbie Bergstrom, Tuolumne County Economic Development. I just want to announce on February 5th at 5 o'clock at the Jamestown Community Hall, we'll be having a community meeting regarding economic development. There we will talk about anything that the community feels will bring economic development to the area and talk about the challenges that exist. So anybody is welcome, but particularly those in the Jamestown community who would like to attend. Again, that's going to be on February 5th at 5 o'clock at the Jamestown Community Hall. And I look forward to, during the budget time, to giving more of an update on different projects that are in the community.
Great, thank you. Good morning.
Morning. Can I drop these off real quick?
Yeah. Looking very dapper.
All right, good morning, Chair Brandon, members of the board. My name is Cody Thompson. I am the Tuolumne County Deputy Agriculture Commissioner and Sealer. I am pleased to submit in accordance with Section 2279 of the California Food and Agriculture Code, Tuolumne County's annual crop and livestock report for 2023. This report provides a statistical description of Tuolumne County's agricultural production. The figures contained in this report represent gross values of agricultural commodities and do not reflect production costs or net returns to growers. Recognizing the crucial role of water in agriculture, this year's theme centered on the waters of Tuolumne County. We started by examining the high elevation waterways, following their path as they travel through the county, supplying reservoirs, agriculture lands, and finally descend into the Central Valley. The 2023 value of agriculture commodities produced in Tuolumne County is estimated at $38,366,257. This is a 24.1% increase from last year's production value of $30,923,680. Overall timber production increased by 23.8% due to a return to harvesting in Tuolumne County after being focused on burn scars in 2022. Agricultural production excluding harvested timber was valued at $25,729,126, which is an increase of 24.2% from the 2022 value. Field crop values fell by 7.7%, while miscellaneous fruit and vegetables saw an increase of 80.6%. This rise was attributed to recovery from the late spring frost of 2022, which had reduced yields, with 2023 bringing both better harvest and higher prices. Apiary and nursery product sales grew by 27.7%. Livestock and poultry was valued at $21,236,584, reflecting a 28.9% increase from 2022. I'd also like to point out that this is a calendar for 2025, so feel free to put it up on your refrigerators. Our office wishes to express our appreciation to the agriculture producers, organizations, and public agencies that have cooperated in producing or providing data for this report. I would like to express my sincere thanks to our small team at the Agriculture Commissioner's staff who compiled this report, and Anna Genesi for once again designing our report. I would also like to thank our Tuolumne County Agriculture Industry, Tuolumne County Farm Bureau, and Tuolumne Utilities District for reference material. I appreciate your time this morning. Have a great day.
Cody, thank you. Looks wonderful. Can people get a copy of this?
Yeah. There's copies in the back for anybody in the public that would like one.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't use paper calendars, but it's pretty. It actually looks pretty good. Good wall decoration. Sean, good morning.
Good morning, Board Chairman Brandon. How was everybody this morning?
Good.
Good. My name's Sean. I'm here from Animal Control. Just wanted to give some staff updates. I wanted to start with some statistics that I was able to pull together in a hurry this morning because I haven't done all of our statistics for 2024 yet. But in 2024, we received, I would say approximately 4,500 to 5,000 field service incidents that we responded on. We received in 2024 around 2,000 calls for service per month, which would come out to about 24,000 calls for service throughout the year for 2024. And we did all that with our very small team and our one receptionist. So just wanted to shed some light on that because they did a great job performing and servicing the community in 2024. We also did great with adoptions. In 2023, we actually only adopted out 66 dogs. And in 2024, we adopted a total of 169 dogs out. So that went up by 100. And I think a lot of that was due to us participating at adoption events with Wilco. So we go to those about once a month. So look for us at Wilco. We're always there with dogs, sometimes cats, mostly dogs. In total, we adopted out 205 animals, so 169 of those being dogs. The others, cats, livestock. You can basically adopt anything from us that we receive. So We returned 233 animals to their owners, and we transferred out 667 animals in 2024. And then I also just wanted to give a heads up that the Animal Control Office is having our entire office refloored in February. So we are going to be closed for about a week, and we'll still have our phones up. We'll still be able to respond to emergencies. We'll still be sending officers out in the field and all that. We'll just have a very minimal amount of office services that are available. So our office will be closed. We will have phones available still, and we'll still have officers out and about, but the office services will be really limited. So I'm working on a press release for that with the exact dates, but it's looking like it's going to be from February 7th until the 18th. And then also with fire season coming up, we do have two teams. We have Team Elite and Team Aces that are comprised of volunteers. They're animal control evacuation teams. They're all volunteers. So we are looking for volunteers always for those teams as we're coming up, to the time of year where we have more fires. So just wanted to put that out there that we are always looking for volunteers for those. And if anybody's interested, they can just contact our office, come by, call, either of those things. So yes, those are my updates.
Great, Sean. Thank you. And we appreciate your team. We know you got a lot on your plate and you're hardworking. So
Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning, Board. Dory Beats here with your Office of Emergency Services. It is January, and I hate to do this because normally I would do this later on in the year, but considering the impacts of the tragedy of Southern California, I want to remind the Board and the public that we must always be prepared. And so if you have not seen our wildfire evacuation brochure, we have this available. We have it printed. We have it in multiple places. We have volunteers, thank you, Carol, who have disseminated that in downtown Sonora to businesses. We make it available to all communities, entities, organizations. When we go to HOA, anytime we do an event, it's very, very important that we are always ready. A lot of other items that we want to encourage, but we'll continue to do that throughout the year. And lastly, I really want to encourage, if you have yet to sign up for our emergency alert notification system, please do so. We prefer when residents and businesses or even visitors go in to opt into the system. You create your own account. We also have brochures. All of this is online on our Office of Emergency Services webpage through the county so that you can access this information so that we, if need to, are able to get a hold of you in the event of emergency. So just want to put that out for the public because things are changing and it's year-round now. So let's all be prepared and be ready, Tuolumne County. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Dory. And I meant to open with this at the beginning of the board meeting, but only to say that I think as a board and a county, our sympathies go out to all the folks fighting the fire down in LA. We have a number of firefighters who are stationed up here who are working down there to fight that. If anything, it's a reminder that this is a statewide issue. This is not a big, small county thing only. This is not only a rural issue. This is something that affects absolutely all of us. And hopefully out of this tragedy, we'll see it come to a close, minimal loss of life as much as possible, but coming to the state, realizing that we don't always have the votes up here. This is something that the whole state needs to also address, and some good may come out of it, but our hearts go out to them. Do we have any other staff reports? Okay, we'll close that. I believe we have a number of consent items there. Do it. Actually, I think we can move the proclamation up, couldn't we? And do that before consent. I know we have a number of members of the public, and it's sometimes frustrating if we end up with an item that might take longer. You never know. So we're going to pause on the consent agenda right now. We're going to move into proclamations and commendations. All right, and if the clerk can read the item, please. Item 11.
Item number 11, consideration of adopting resolution 03-25 proclaiming December 14, 2024 as Champions Day in Tuolumne County.
Wonderful, thank you. This was something that actually both Supervisor Griefer and I had talked about, I think right after it happened, pretty much in December. What a cool opportunity as a community. For whatever reason, we're this tiny little county, we're 55,000 people. There's, that's a drop in the bucket for the state. And yet in terms of leadership and athletics and Olympic folks going, I mean, we really punch above our weight. But even amongst all of the folks who have done, so incredible in these various fields, to have both the Somerville and the Sonora High School teams achieve division championships as the small little Tuolumne County on the same day is an absolutely incredible feat. Supervisor Griefer had mentioned that we should bring this up and really highlight it. And I know that obviously this is a bit belated. We've had some transition with it, so this is a retroactive resolution. But we wanted to honor that achievement and all the folks that helped to make that happen. Wanted to ask if any of the folks with Sonora High School or Somerville would like to come up and maybe speak a little bit about it. No pressure. I know, again, it's kind of intimidating. We're just normal people up here. Superintendent, welcome. Thank you.
So on behalf of Somerville High School and working directly with Ed through Sonora High School, it's been a privilege to bring this entire community together. I think it's been long overdue, and I can't tell you how proud I am of our Board of Supervisors for helping step in to make sure we could get a parade going and just get all of our fans from the entire county together. And that parade was amazing. So thank you so much, as well as all the other entities within the county for doing their work. And for my partner, Ed, thank you.
I'm Ed Pelfrey. I'm the superintendent of Sonora Union High School District. It really is a credit to our entire community. I think what's important to realize with all athletics, but particularly with football, is the amount of time and training that is put in by our students and their coaches. It's a year-round endeavor at both high schools. And I think that really is a credit to the families of our county. This doesn't happen in other places. We both played teams who had natural-born superior athletes. But the amount of time and effort that comes from families supporting coaches and supporting those athletes year-round to make sure that they understand what's necessary to succeed, not just on the playing field, but in the rest of their life, that commitment to themselves and then to each other as a team. And I think that's what it's really all about. And I think that that's something I want to honor our families in this county who have supported their children in doing that. And then also the amount of support that we've got throughout the community in funding to both high schools to make sure that this was an incredible experience for our children, and also to everybody who made, like Mike said, everybody who made that parade happen. One of our coaches, and both of our coaches today are at KVML being interviewed right now, and that's the reason that they're not here today. One of our coaches thought, hey, we've all been given a lot of accolades. It's fine. We don't need a parade. It's not that big a deal. And then as they're walking back from the parade, I said, how'd it go? And he said, I turned around the corner and saw the community while I was riding on that truck. He said, and it brought me to tears. I just couldn't believe it. And for our kids, how much it meant. And then as we're walking back up the street, and somebody said, it's like a Hallmark movie right here in our hometown. And it makes you feel blessed once again to be here in this county. Thank you very much.
Greatly appreciate both of you being able to attend and speak and all the work you've done. Normally, we would have with our board one member present comments, but since we have two that don't have those two districts and another two that have the high schools in it, if we wanted to go down and be able to offer any brief comments on this item, open it up. We'll do it this one time because it's kind of a special one.
Well, you want me to start? I mean,
yeah.
There's so much that I could say, but that has already been said. I mean, we are so proud of our high schools and our student athletes in Tuolumne County. Not just the football teams, but I think we excel in so many different areas, and it just shows the dedication that the parents have for their students, that the teachers have, and the school administrators. From top to bottom, this is something where, I got to say, it doesn't surprise me You know, I mean, it's wonderful, and it's a shock that we had both teams get to the championships. But man, they're really well-led teams, really well worked programs, and you know, I'm expecting to see another couple of championships next year too, right? Is that but a great job, and we're all so proud of our students in Tuolumne County, and I think I speak for the whole county when I say that. So congratulations, truly.
I'll just say where's he at? While you were speaking, it made me think personally of my son, right? He's a local kid, fell in love with soccer. He's not very big. He's a short kid. But he has this drive and this desire that's undeniable. So what you said about the parents coming behind the kids and supporting them and loving them and nurturing them, one thing that I've learned from watching my son grow is that sky's the limit if you're willing to work hard. There's natural talent and abilities, and if those people can work hard, they'll go to the top. But so many of them don't, and so the fact that we have, like with my son, seeing him work so hard, and you know he wants to be a professional soccer player, and he's on his way if he keeps up, trains every day. But the fact that we got a community full of kids like that, and it shows with 2 championship games, and we got families in this community who support these kids. And it is like a Hallmark movie. It's incredible. You know, we get caught up in a lot of the politics and some of the drama that goes on in our community, but at the end of the day, I think what took place a while back is just like the pinnacle, the highlight of what this community is all about, which is families, kids, and achieving and working hard and not getting free handouts in life and getting dirty and working hard. And so I think if there's one thing that hopefully those kids learned was that there's nothing that they can't accomplish through hard work. And I hope they all go on to be successful, amazing people because they already have a really good start in life. So thank you guys. Thank you coaches for putting in the time. Parents for putting in the time. Because at the end of the day, kids have a drive, but if they're not stewarded and if they're not shown the way, they usually get lost along the way. So thank you guys for what you do.
As soon as the news broke that both teams had won the championship, I was probably on the phone with Supervisor Brandon within seconds. And because I don't come from the sports background, I come from the Boy Scout service. You know, 2 Eagle Scouts on the board here recognize that it takes really a team to bring good kids to excellent programs to become future leaders. And whether it's the Scouts or whether it's soccer, which I could never kick a ball in my life, or it was playing football. It takes everybody to make these young men and women true future leaders of this community. And I wanted to make sure that we recognize it immediately, that these teams recognize how important they are to this community and how much I look forward to watching them grow and continue to be successful. And I can't be more pleased to be a part of this program to make sure that not only the coaches who probably went through a lot of hair pulling and stress and everything that went with it, but the kids that can look back and use the Al Bundy scenario, 40 years later, shoe salesman saying, I won the championship. So I think it's an important achievement, and I just want to say congratulations and thank you.
All said well. I'm not sure what else to say. Okay, there we go. All said very well. Obviously, I'm the District 1 supervisor. I'm a Sonora High graduate. I have a daughter. I have one daughter left still going to Sonora High, and I can tell you the rivalry between Sonora and Somerville is like the Chevy Ford argument. It's been going on forever, but when you watch the parade, nobody cared. All they cared is we won. I think it's awesome that both teams won this year together. And you look at town and you look at it gives the town something to be proud in, right? We came together, right? It's high school football, but it gave us something to rally out and look at. And I want to make sure we give a shout out to the city of Sonora. They were instrumental in helping us pull that parade off. Caltrans was a little bit rougher to deal with, but we got there with the help of a lot of people sitting up here. So credit to both schools. I'm sure they would love to play a game each other someday, maybe again. And I think next year we're definitely going to see a championship out of one of the schools again. So congratulations. And I want to give credit to the parents, by the way. When you go to a Sonora or Somerville game, even when it's an away game, you'll see more parents of our kids at those games than the home teams. And that says volumes of how this got here. So Congratulations, guys.
That's great. Lot of love up here from some of your community electeds there, and I think it's really important. We don't often always take the time to celebrate the positive, the wins that happen. We weren't on that team, we weren't the ones doing it, but celebrating and appreciating the work of others in our school districts, in our coaching staff, and our parents. There's so much good work that doesn't get enough attention. We tend to focus on the bad. And here's an opportunity to celebrate each other and to recognize excellence, something that truly is historic. So not only a resolution recognizing that this is an achievement to be noted, but declaring that we are to have a holiday. See how that coach who didn't like the parade feels about his own holiday on it. With that, I'd like to read the resolution and call for a motion on the board after public comment. I see you, Sarah. So, a resolution of the Board of Supervisors of the County of Tuolumne, whereas December 14th, 2024 marks a historic day for the County of Tuolumne, as both Somerville Union High School and Sonora High School football teams have achieved extraordinary success by winning their respective CIF State Championship Bowl games. And whereas the Somerville Bears football team defeated Monte Vista High School of San Diego County with a 38-21 victory in the 6A championship. And whereas the Sonora Wildcats football team triumphed over St. Matthias? I mean, I'm not going to, what? Matthias? Okay. Haven't had to deal with that one. Of Downey with a commanding 52-34 win in the Division 4A championship. And whereas this is the first time in their histories that both schools have won their CIF State Championship Bowl games, and whereas both teams exhibited unparalleled teamwork, perseverance, and determination, showcasing the highest standards of athletic excellence and bringing pride to their schools, communities, and the entire county. And whereas the victories of both teams are not only a testament to the hard work and commitment of the players, coaches, and staff, but also to the unwavering support of their families, fans, and the local communities who have shown remarkable dedication throughout the championship season. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Supervisors of the County of Tuolumne hereby proclaims, retroactively, December 14th, 2024 as Champions Day in recognition of the remarkable achievements of the Somerville Bears and Sonora Wildcats football teams, and extends its heartfelt congratulations to the players, coaches, families, and communities involved in this historic accomplishment. With that, we'll open up public comment. All right, seeing, oh, there we go.
I just wanted to say that I'm not a sports person. I don't relate on that level. I don't even have kids. I don't relate on that level. But reading all about it, one thing that made me really proud was the hotel guy where they stayed. They had never seen a team have breakfast and clean up after themselves. Good job.
Thank you for having public comment. I'd like the superintendent from Somerville to join me. So I did this for Ed last night. So I wanted you to have a souvenir of this once-in-a-lifetime moment.
Oh, wonderful.
From the parade, yeah.
Thank you, Carol.
I just want to say I've said this before, but I'm officially a Bearcat because I've had kids at both schools, and it was the coolest thing on that day to just sit there and flip back and forth between the two channels, you know, watching both games simultaneously and just see the crushing victory that both of them had. It was very cool. I don't know what the odds are of both schools winning their state championships when neither of them had even won individually. I don't know, maybe someone smarter than me, like Bob Kirk, could figure that out, but I bet you it's at least 1 in a million, it's gotta be. And so that's really spectacular, and it was just such a great thing for our community. The parade was awesome, and this next idea is not mine, but you've kind of alluded to it, Supervisor Holland, which wouldn't it be amazing if somehow, some way, there can be a exhibition game between the two teams? And I know it's probably very difficult with all the kids in other sports and what have you, but that would be very cool. So if it can't happen, we can at least dream about it, and I'm sure that would be a very awesome fundraiser for our community too. But I just want to say congratulations to both schools and how just fun it was to sit and watch all that happen throughout the whole season. So thanks from me, my family, and the whole community. Thanks.
All right, thank you. With that, we'll close public comment. I appreciate everybody that spoke, and we'll bring it back to the board. Be looking for a motion.
Chair, I'll move to approve the resolution.
Motion by Supervisor Campbell, Vice Chair Campbell.
I'll second.
All right, and a second by Supervisor Griefer. Always remind everybody, still has to pass. So bring it for a vote. Oh, we don't have to do the roll. Nobody's on. I'm still so used to the roll voting. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed? Abstaining? All right, it passes 5-0. Thank you so much. And would the board like to take a brief recess if you want to grab a photo or anything? All right, we're doing a 5-minute bio break, and if you're here for that item, don't leave just yet. We'll be back at 9:57. All right, everybody, we are reconvening the Board of Supervisors meeting. Be seated. Okay, with that, we're going to be going and moving into the consent calendar. These are the items adopted in bulk there. I believe we have Supervisor Holland.
Sorry, I'm not used to this whole mute button thing yet. So on item number 5, I think, is it 5? 5, I'm going to recuse myself from it because I still have a connection to Sonora High. It's the donation for the fire equipment. So are we going to do that one now?
Yep, no, we'll be pulling that one off of the consent calendar and then bringing that back after this. So we'll open this up to, are there any other items that board members would like to pull? Going once, going twice. All right. Are there any comments on any of the items on consent? Oh, and we still have to read them too, huh? There we go. Actually, can the clerk read the consent agenda minus item 5?
Item number 1, approving the minutes of November 05, 2024, November 07, 2024, December 03, 2024, December 10, 2024, December 17, 2024, January 06, 2025, January 07, 2025, and January 08, 2025. Item number 2, adopting resolution 01-25, authorizing the tax collector to conduct a public auction of tax defaulted properties and to conduct a reoffer sale of any remaining unsold parcels. Item number 3, approving the reappointment of Kirk Ford, James Fellon, Stuart Crook, Michael Sardella, and Galen Weston to the Tuolumne County Resource Conservation District with terms to expire on February 04, 2028. Item number 4, finding that a summary of ordinance numbers 3474 and 3475 were published on December 2024, and ordinance number 3476 was published on December 31, 2024 in the Union Democrat as required by law. Item number 6, approving the award of agreement to Garrison Electric for the assessment, design, and installation of electrical needs regarding the temporary relocation of the Sheriff's Dispatch operations to the Stryker Court Building in the amount of $172,975 and authorizing the County Administrator to sign all related documents. Item number 7, approving plans and specifications for the Groveland Modular Bathroom Project at 18875 Ponderosa Lane in Groveland and authorizing staff to release an invitation for bids. Item number 8, accepting the resignation of Carol Sutherland from the Area 12 Agency on Aging Advisory Council and directing the clerk of the board to send a letter of appreciation and post a notice of vacancy. Item number 9, approving amendments to the board members' appointments to the Board of Supervisors local governing bodies for the calendar year of 2025. Item number 10, approving out-of-sale travel for Supervisor Kirk to attend the 2025 National Association of Counties, NACO, Legislative Conference, March 01 to March 04, 2025, in Washington, D.C., with an estimated travel expense of $2,200.
Great. Thank you to the clerk. Appreciate that. We'll bring it back for any comments on the consent calendar from the board. Supervisor Griefer.
I hope I'm not violating any of the special rules, but regarding item number 7, I just want to say thanks to the staff for really working on putting together the plans to get the bathroom up to speed up in Groveland at the Tesla station. It's been kind of a big thorn in the side of a lot of people, and I just want to say I know I've been driving it really hard, and sometimes I come off not the nicest, but I really do appreciate the hard work that the staff has put on this issue.
Great, perfect, thank you. Any other comments from the board? Okay, seeing none, we'll open up the consent calendar minus item 5 for any public comment. Any members of the public like to speak, please step up for 3 minutes.
Morning, Board. My name is Michael Roberson, Assistant Director for General Services Agency. And on item 7, I just wanted to bring a point of clarity on the financial component of that. This item was approved in previous years by previous boards, and now we're finally to the place of being able to implement it. And although the decision, if this is approved today, to approve the plans and specs and go out for bid doesn't have any financial implications, the financial implication is when we come back to it with a contract, and we'll spell out exactly what the funding sources are for that. But there are matching funds that were required as a part of, and that are in the current budget as a part of the capital projects under buildings and improvements. And so there is money in that for meeting the matching fund requirements, but we'll spell that all out more specifically when we come back. If this is approved and we release the RFP for a contractor, we'll be back with more of those. Hopefully that's helpful.
Great, thank you. Okay, any further public comment? With that, we're closing public comment, bringing it back to the board. I'll be looking for a motion to approve all of the consent calendar minus item 5.
So moved.
All right.
Second.
Supervisor Griefer, second from Supervisor Kirk. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? All right, it passes 5-0. So with that, we'll be moving into item 5. The clerk can read the item.
Item number 5, adopting resolution 02-25, authorizing donation of surplus fire equipment to Sonora High School and execute the release and waiver of liability and indemnification agreement.
And since this is on consent calendar, we probably only need a real brief update with it. But Chief, good to see you. Good morning.
Good to see you as well. Good morning, Andy Murphy, your Assistant Fire Chief. As detailed in the memo, with Fire Department continues to streamline operations, and we found some out-of-date and surplus fire equipment that we can no longer use, but there is still value to that equipment. We've previously given items to Columbia College, and now we'd like to take advantage of this opportunity to donate the county to donate these items to Sonora High School's Regional Occupational Program. So as detailed in the memo, there's a waiver of liability and a resolution.
Great, Chief. Thank you. Appreciate it. All right, bring it to the board for any questions. All right, any comments? We'll open up public comment on the item. If any members of the public have a comment, please speak for 3 minutes, up to 3 minutes. All right, closing public comment, bringing it back to the board for questions, comments, or a motion to approve item 5.
Move to approve staff recommendations.
I'll second.
Okay, first by Supervisor Kirk, a second by Supervisor Campbell. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those aye.
Aye.
Yeah. All those opposed, abstaining. All right, passes 4-0. And with Supervisor Holland absent, recused. There we go. Yeah, kicked out of the room, invited back. Somehow had time to go to Starbucks. Oh. Great. All right. We're done with our proclamations and the consent calendar, 10:07, doing pretty good. I believe we are moving then into item 12. If the clerk would please read it.
Presentation, discussion, and direction on updated financial trends and budget projections for fiscal year 24/25 and fiscal year 25/26.
Great, thank you. And I want to begin this with a heartfelt thank you, especially to our finance staff, our auditor. I know that this has been a driving point with the board that we want to have these stats and financial info, but it's a lot to put together, especially when we haven't always had it in the same format. I just want to put a moment to appreciate that I think this is a really good step for us. I think it's going to help us make better decisions, but the work's appreciated. A lot of folks, if anybody is watching, salaried folks, you know, it's not always a 9 to 5, and some of these big items end up being a lot of extra hours. And so just wanted to say thank you for the effort on it. And with that, hand it over.
Thank you, Supervisor Brandon. So today, good morning, Tracy Riggs, County Administrator's Office. With me is Liz Peterson, Deputy County Administrator, and on my right here is Donnie McNair, our Auditor Controller. So this is an item that your board first saw in July of this last summer, 23, and during that presentation, there were questions and also requests for additional information. So this now, and Supervisor Kirk had said, this will probably go from like I think it was like 50 or 65 slides to like up to 100. We're at 81. However, I don't want anyone to panic. Some of these we're revisiting some, and some of them are updates to what you've already seen. So I do believe we can move through most of this rather quickly. And I want to, a couple things, when we presented in July, the fiscal year 24 numbers, we didn't have, auditor's office had not yet finalized and reconciled the year. We've moved from estimates to actuals. So everything you're seeing when we look at historical are actuals. When we get into budget, we're looking at projections. The other, as I mentioned, there were a series of requests from board members for additional information. We will point those out as we move through this. The other one is, I know it's frustrating as we're talking about how long it takes to put these together, but unfortunately, the newest finance software that we have, what we thought we were going to get is not what we got. Everything is still manual. We're literally pulling information out of 100 different places in finance, putting it in Excel, creating charts and graphs. So my point is, it just takes a little bit more time, and we are looking at other solutions that might speed that up so we can work, smarter, not harder. So that's something that we're looking into, but that will take time. With that being said, most of this will be Liz and I providing, and then if you have specific questions about the accounting, the balances, and that type of stuff, Donnie is absolutely here to answer any questions, the process in which he uses, and then happy to answer questions. Supervisor Brandon, will look to you as if you want to do questions at the end or as we're moving along.
Great, thank you. I think I'd like to have it to where we can do questions as we go. Is helpful if that's okay with the board, and if that ends up being problematic at all, then we'll continue on. Just know that I've been in the same spot where often I ask a question on a slide and it's the next slide. So, what's the thing? Sit on it for one slide and make sure.
And you do all have copies. There are copies in the back as well. The other thing I wanted to highlight is as we move through this and we begin having conversations, what we're looking for at the end of this is, did we give you everything that you asked for? If not, let's highlight what else you'd like to know and we'll bring it back. And then the other one is, what additional information might you want that you're not seeing? Again, we'll bring that back to you as well, keeping in mind that we will need direction from this board in February as we start developing the budget in March with our department heads. So I'll be needing to be able to give them specific direction about what it is that they need to be taking into account when they're developing those budgets. And finally, we do have a closed session on here for bargaining, and that is during the process of budget, we don't talk about positions, anything that would impact those positions. We do that in a closed session. So if you have any of those types of questions or want to have those conversations, we have a closed session that we can get into that a bit later. This is really meant to be much more high-level operations and those line items within those operations. So with that, we will get started.
Okay, and I do want to also give a shout out and thank you to Sean Cole, who's over there. He is a grant-funded analyst in the county administrator's office, and he works specifically on a lot of this budget finance, and he did a lot of that manual work that Tracy mentioned. I mean, we all got to participate, but he did a lot of going back to 2008, pulling in that data. So I'm extremely appreciative for all of Sean's work in putting this together too. So the review today, these are the high-level things we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about just a review on the 24-25 adopted budget. We're going to spend a little time talking about mandated costs. Those are not mandated services. Those are internal costs that we have as an organization to operate. We're going to talk about revenues, general revenues as well as departmental revenues, and then we're going to talk about expenses. We're going to talk specifically focusing on the general fund today, salaries and benefits as well as services and supplies. Then we're going to spend some time drilling down into allocated positions. Those are the number and type of positions that we have. And then at the end is where we will get into that multi-year budget outlook. We're going to focus on the general fund as well as the fire fund. So the fiscal year 24-25 adopted budget by the numbers. The budget this year is $302,690,260. The county's budget, you'll probably recall this from the town hall meetings this summer or in September that we did, but the county's budget is comprised of 3 types of funds: governmental funds, enterprise funds, and internal service funds. Within governmental, there's the general fund, which you will hear a lot about today, as well as capital funds, which is where we budget for all of our capital projects, road and buildings, as well as special revenue funds. And those special revenue funds are just like what they sound. They get special sources of revenue to provide the services that they provide. Those are departments like our Health and Human Services Agency, our road fund, etc. So of this $302 million budget, the board has discretion over only $67 million of it. That is what we call our general, or sometimes you'll hear our discretionary revenues. Those general discretionary revenues is what the board uses for general fund operations and services primarily. A little bit goes into capital projects for our capital, our deferred maintenance and capital projects, capital improvement projects, and then some goes to county roads and to fire. Everything else in this budget, in this $302 million budget, is dedicated sources of revenue that is for mandates and other programs that must be spent on those specific services, as well as revenue, state and federal allocations, grants, or fees for service. So just a couple of examples, and I know you've heard this before, but just as a reminder, the board cannot move revenue from the behavioral health fund into the road fund to pave more roads. Those are dedicated revenue specific for behavioral health services. Another example, the board can't use grants that we've acquired to support homeless housing initiatives to hire more sheriff's deputies. Okay, so then this is just, I'm not even gonna, oh yeah, sorry. So this is just the adopted budget, and this is how it's broken out by fund, the amount of revenue and the amount of expense. This is what gets us to that $302 million budget. The general fund this year at the adopted budget is $124 million, almost $125 million. You can see the capital funds and what they are this year. Then these are all of the special revenue funds. There's the list there. You can refer to your PowerPoint later and to see the specific other special revenue funds. And then these are the enterprise funds. These funds operate similar to a business in that we charge fees to cover the cost of the services. And then we have our internal service funds, and you'll hear more about mandated costs. This is where we budget for those internal services or those mandated costs, and then we charge them out to all of the other departments and funds. And so this is what their budget is this year, and then this was their estimated fund balance. Okay, so now we're going to move right into mandated costs.
Okay, so we really wanted to drill down into mandated costs because they are much like in a private business. You have fixed costs. Before you can operate a single minute, you have to know you can pay your building, that liability, workers' comp. So what we have provided in the next slide is a list of what we call mandated costs. These are not related to mandated services. They are, again, the list that you see: workers' compensation, computer replacements, PERS fixed costs, we've talked about that, leave liability, which is where we have to account and place money aside for employee leave that accrues. IT Enterprise Fund, I don't need to read all these to you, but what you can see on that chart is it's about 14% of the total budget. So this year, the general fund has $17 million of mandated costs that are contained in the budgets that we must pay. And so as you can imagine, that can drive up the cost in each individual cost center, but also help put some pressure on service delivery as this cost continues to increase. The other thing is I wanted to explain how do we develop this. So the way that this is developed, it's based on a couple of factors: the number of employees you have, the size of your budget, and the number and expense of those claims. So as you would imagine, someone like, say, the Sheriff's Department and Animal Control has a higher level of workers' compensation than you might see in an administrative office. And so you will naturally see liability claims and workers' comp claims in those more dangerous types of cost centers because of the nature of their work. Also, it's driven by the size of the budget. So if you have any questions and you would like to look into that anymore, let us know. The other one is remember that when we're restructuring or reorganizing departments, those don't go away. So for example, when we eliminated the Office of Revenue Recovery last year, what happens is we just reallocate those fixed costs to the other departments so they don't go away. So just something to keep in mind as we move through this. And we have seen, as you can see, it's not here yet, we do have some increases that we've seen as a result that driving this, and Liz will take you through those.
So you've seen this chart before. This is one of the things that Supervisor Kirk asked for. We added in the portion of the PERS fixed payment, which is one of the mandated costs. We added the portion that the general fund shares. For our two new board members, and well, really for everybody, I just want to remind folks that prior to 2018, we never paid this before. So the PERS fixed payment, it's different than our PERS percentage, which is a portion of somebody's salary. This PERS fixed payment is based on our unfunded liability previously. That PERS essentially gave it to us, amortized it out over 20 years, 30 or 20 years, and then they established this payment for us. So this is in addition to what we already pay in our just regular PERS percentage for our existing employees. The idea is that the liability was growing faster than what we were putting into it. So this is supposed to get us to, are fully funding our liability at some point. So in 2018, you can see the payment was $4.2 million, $2.7 million of that what came out of the general fund. We do not have our forecast for our PERS fixed payment for next year yet. That comes to the auditor's office, and then the auditor's office, like Tracy said, allocates that out. But they do give us a forecast. And so while this year we had 11.7, nearly $12 million of a PERS fixed payment, we are anticipating that to go up, well, really by about $900,000. And that's across all funds, but you can see what the general fund's portion would be, assuming that it stays around 60-ish%, that the general fund bears about 60%. So this year, you can see in fiscal year 24-25 that 63% of the PERS fixed payment was allocated to departments in the general fund, and that's primarily because of what CAO Riggs said, that most of your public safety departments have the highest salaries and not so much for PERS, but yeah, their salaries and benefits there are higher, and so that's how they get allocated out. Sorry for that little.
Something. The one thing with safety is they just get a better percentage because of the nature of their work. It might be a 3% for your classic employees, where maybe 2% for your your administrative employees. So that's why they tend to be a bit more expensive when it comes to PERS. The other thing we've talked to your board about this is normally we do, in any of these types of things like liability, we get an actuarial. It'll tell us you should strive to be funded at 75%. PERS is expecting entities to be funded at 100%. That's a huge difference. And so what we'd like to do is seek legislation. We've talked to you about this, is get in there, seek legislation that might require counties, and I can't imagine this, I don't know where schools are on this, but anyone that has PERS, the unfunded liability can be a big debt that's sitting out there. But what if we were only required to say be at 80%? The idea that counties aren't going to go away, we are going to be here. So can we get them to have an 80% confidence rate, that could reduce that fixed payment significantly. Doesn't mean it stops, but it could reduce it. As you can see, this last year, we had paid $6.1 million out of the general fund for that fixed payment. If we could get legislation that would allow us to be at a confidence level below 100%, that helps. The other thing is it's very driven by the market. You can see when our payment goes down, that's when they had a better investment return on their investment. When you are 100% funded, I was at a conference with the actuarial, sitting through, listening to how they do all of it. A lady with the city stands up and says, we're 100% funded. We didn't see a benefit. And she said, right, if you're 100% funded, you don't see a benefit of a great return that year. So, there's pros and cons, but that's something we'd like to pursue in the future that might reduce that payment.
And I waited one slide. See, I did really good. I wanted to ask if you could explain a little more too on the total liability and then kind of the hospital wave, because we had talking about employment in the past. I mean, the county had something like 950 employees. Where we're kind of at with PERS Classic and that whole situation, because these minimum payments, I'm understanding a lot of this is driven by that retirement bubble.
Yeah, so high level, we can get into, we did remove the slide because they didn't change. So because any employee that comes into the county system, once they are vested, or they could go somewhere else and be vested, the county will always have a share in the cost of their future pension. So those employees that we had where, when we closed the hospital, say 300 employees were laid off, the county still will be paying those portion of the pension they earned while they worked here. That is absolutely part of this number when we look at an unfunded liability. We also have seen where the number of employees, and that's why we don't have, I believe we removed that slide, didn't we? The number of employees paying into PERS as a result, because of when we were at like 1,000 employees, is less than what we see that are taking it out, or what are, so it's like Social Security. It's taking almost 2.5 people paying into PERS in order to meet the cost as we're moving forward. And so that's, as this changes and as the costs drive up and what you're looking at, it continues to drive the unfunded liability percentage up. The other thing is the percentage cost increases on a yearly basis as well. So just another cost driver there. Does that answer your question, Supervisor Brandon?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay.
Supervisor Brandon?
Yes.
I'm looking to my left and looking to my right and seeing people writing notes. I think it might be better if we ask all of our questions at the end.
That'd be fine.
I'm not trying to kill the flow, but I think they're kind of in their role, and as we're jotting down, if that's okay, I know we already decided one way.
I am always open to suggestions with it. So if that's fine with the board, we can do all the questions at the end, and that's all good.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, so liability, and I'm seeing that this year's 24-25 budget number did not end up on the chart, although we do have it, so I'm not sure what happened there, so I apologize. But you can see that our liability insurance, this is another one of our many mandated costs, that our insurance for 24-25, the liability, 65% of our liability cost is borne by the general fund, and again, I'm sorry that bottom line didn't make it. But as CAO Riggs mentioned, this is one of those ones that liability charges are allocated based on we call it experience and exposure. So experience is the amount of claims per department. So again, if you have more claims or maybe more severe claims, you're going to have a higher level of experience. And then exposure, which is how many total, what's your potential claims that you could have based on how many or what the size of your budget is, how many people you have, or what the size of your salaries and benefits are. So that's how we allocate them out. And then, that's how they're charged. So this year, again, 65%. So generally, our mandated costs, about 60% goes to the general fund. There's some fluctuation up and down, and you can see in that graph over time. But you can anticipate about 60% goes to the general fund for all of our mandated costs.
And one of the main cost drivers of what we've seen for this is the number of claims related to storm damages that really drove up. And then we've had a few other outlying claims that have been paid over the years in liability that has also made that increase. We did make the decision to increase our deductible a while back so that we could pay more out of pocket, reduce that premium. The way that this mandated cost, this particular one works is we fund not only the premium, but what we estimate we might pay out in claims so that that we have enough cash sitting in that account, and then we reconcile it on an annual basis.
Okay, so moving now to the revenues, we're going to talk first about our general revenues. This, of course, as I mentioned, is revenue that the board has discretion over spending. So general revenues are budgeted in the general fund, and as I mentioned previously, they're used almost exclusively to fund general fund department operations, with a couple exceptions, roads, some capital, fire, and we'll talk more about that. The main sources of revenue are property tax, sales tax, and TOT, although A87 actually is a significant, about 14% of the general revenues, and we'll talk a little more about what A87 is in a second. So this year, we are projecting $67 million in revenue. We're actually projecting more than that, but 4.8 million of it actually gets transferred out to those other funds, the road and health and human services specifically, for mandates and maintenance of effort, or MOEs as we call them. We are required to, the revenue comes into the general revenues and we are required to transfer them out. And then the maintenance of effort for roads is specific for us. It's kind of like our cost share, or our portion of the, our contribution, the general fund's contribution to the SB1 gas tax. This is just an example. You've probably seen something like this before in one of the other presentations that we've done, but this is just how we use the general discretionary revenues. So as an example, in the adopted budget, the assessor recorder's office, they pull in departmental revenues of about $335,000. But they have expenses, salaries and benefits, services and supplies of about $2.1 million. So that leaves a net county cost, or, a hole to be plugged, or whatever you want to say, of about 1.7, almost $1.8 million. And so that $1.8 million comes from those discretionary revenues. Same with, again, another example, the Mother Lode Regional Juvenile Detention Facility. They get significant departmental revenues of almost $3.4 million, and their expenses are about $4.3 million. So that leaves a net county cost of $918,000. And so that's $918,000 of general discretionary revenues that the board uses to balance that cost center. And I do just want to highlight them, because I think it's always important to remind the board and the public that this $918,000 is less than what we were paying, or what we would be paying if we were to ship youth out of county. And so we're actually, not only are our youth getting, I think, better services being housed in the Mother Lode Regional Juvenile Detention Facility, but it's actually costing less money as well.
We'll go quickly through these slides, as you have seen them quite a few times. Tuolumne County is 77% public lands, and we did find when we were doing our community engagement, this was an area that a lot of the community members were kind of surprised to learn about the way that this works and what the limitations are. This, on the next slide, there is a map. So when you look at this and you look at all of the green and the pink, those are county lands that are either under state and or federal jurisdiction. That means the board has no discretion over that. We can't develop there, and there are no taxes generated in those areas as well. That limits us is when you look at someone like Calaveras County that is only 21% public lands. It's a big difference. So this is one of the areas that create some complexity when we're looking at revenue growth in our county. The next one is, this is another area, a lot of our, those who engage with us were surprised. The way, and this happened some time ago, but property taxes fund more than county services. 64% of those property taxes go to fund our schools, which we know they need, and they are still, I would say, underfunded. And then 26% comes to the county. You see special districts, fire districts, and the city get a portion as well. So for every dollar that we pay in property taxes, 26% goes to fund local services with the county. Then the property tax growth, you see we have pretty consistent growth here. And this, the only time you're not seeing that is really during those recessionary times, which were quite a ways back, thankfully. But when you look at this, it's pretty consistent. Again, more that you've seen. This is another area that we found people were surprised at, especially individuals that I think are pretty savvy when it comes to taxes. But for every, we have the lowest level of sales tax that you can have. It's the minimum threshold of 7.25%. The way that's broken up is for every $100, $6 would go to the state of California, $1 comes to the county, and then 25 cents would go to TCTC. And then the next slide reflects what that sales tax looks like. And this is one of those areas when you see this is based on actuals. It is all over the place. It is really hard when you look at one year having a 22% growth and the next year having a 0.5% growth and then jumping up. What's been more interesting is, I mentioned this last year, is between 23 and 24, our sales tax only grew by $9,000. I sat in on a presentation at CSAC for the Finance Committee, and I sat up there with Alameda and Fresno County. What you're seeing is what we believe the impacts that you're seeing here is there was a Wayfair decision and there was an Amazon decision about warehouses. Those, one of them was with the city of Tracy. They won. Now wherever it used to be the point of sale. So if I order from Amazon, the sales tax would come here from the point of sale. Now for those warehouses, it's actually going to where the warehouse is at. So if you're in Tracy, you're in Fresno, that's where your warehouse is, they're getting the sales tax for all of that. We believe that's what's driving this. When I sat next to the Fresno CEO, they're doing great with sales tax. They have warehouses, as you know, up and down their corridor. We don't have any of those warehouses. We believe that's what's driving a lot of this. We also sat in during that presentation with HDL, which is also who our auditor works with for our sales tax. And they're just telling us, don't expect to see increases, big increases in your sales tax for next year. And even when you look at the state budget, most of that is personal income tax, capital gains. It's not necessarily sales tax that's driving those revenue growth.
Okay, and then the last discretionary revenue kind of big bucket that we talk about is TOT, or transient occupancy tax. You can see there's been significant growth in our transient occupancy tax, except for in 2020, which was COVID when people weren't traveling. So you can see our 2024 numbers came in higher than what we had thought and higher than what we had presented to the board previously. And so we'll talk a little bit more about the revenue team, but we did as a team meet and discuss, and we did increase what we think TOT will bring in from what we presented to your board at the adopted, and we'll discuss more about that at the mid-year budget and actually later on in this presentation. But yeah, I mean, we're continuing to see significant growth in TOT. Oh yeah, sorry. And then in 2022, you see that almost 52% growth. That's when we increased the TOT, or when the voters increased TOT to go from 10% to 12%. Okay, and then this is that last big kind of bucket of general revenues, discretionary revenues. This is A87. So this comes in, as I mentioned, to the general fund. It's used to balance general fund operations because it is non-general fund departments that pay this. These are essentially charges that get charged out for internal operations, services that are provided by internal operations, HR, county council, auditor's office, treasurer, assessor, county administrator's office, facilities, and IT. And so those external departments get an allocation of some of those costs for those internal departments, and then they provide the A87 revenue into the general fund. So you can see that there's been some consistent growth. Part of it is because, well, in large part, I think it's because we have had some significant investments in those internal departments, specifically, I would say IT. We had, in the last couple of years, we've had some very significant investments in things like software, hardware, servers, variety of things like that. We'll talk a little bit more about what we're projecting in the future, but we are projecting this will go down. It's really going to kind of level out a little bit, primarily because a couple years ago your board established an IT internal service fund. So it's almost like departments now are getting directly charged. They get their own mandated cost line from that IT internal service fund rather than this A87 allocation. So overall, our general revenues are, I mean, growing. There's some steady growth, certainly in the last 5-ish or so years. And this number does not include that amount that comes into the general fund and then has to go out for pass-throughs or for realignment or whatever. But you can see what those numbers are, and yeah. Okay, and then we're going to talk about the other big revenue bucket, the departmental revenues. And these are those grants, allocations, fees for service. These are what help pay for a department's operations. Overall, the general fund departmental revenue growth, you can see right there, we had pretty significant growth in 2024 of 11%. Now, this does exclude those large grant-funded cost centers like the Master Stewardship Agreement, or in OES, we have the home hardening and the Community Wildfire Defense Grant of many millions of dollars. So we pulled those out. But nevertheless, our departments, as you know, have been extremely creative and successful in applying for grants. And so there is still significant grant revenue that are housed within each department. I think of, about almost $2.5 million of encampment resolution funds that went into the homeless housing or homeless cost center. And then there's a bunch of other grants. I mean, I could list a lot off the top of my head, but so that's primarily where we're seeing the departmental revenue growth is in those grants. And then this just kind of gives you the the visual, I guess, of what we just talked about. Public safety is seeing some significant departmental revenue growth. The sheriff's office saw some, and I think particularly you saw in the last slide, like during COVID response, there was a lot of funding available from COVID. They were doing a lot of housing of state inmates in the jail and a handful of other things. But you're also seeing probation. There's been some consistent growth in departmental revenues in probation. This is another one of those slides, by the way, that I think it was Supervisor Kirk that asked to see from the last presentation. So, So, and then these are the non-general funds or the other funds, departmental revenue growth. And you can see how things are growing. Things do generally continue to grow within those non-general fund departments as well. And then this is that visual. I know it's a lot. Supervisor Kirk, you specifically asked to see the road funding portion to kind of stand out more, so you can see that sort of purplish number or that purplish line. That's SB1 funding. You can see it's sort of growth or perhaps not over the last couple of years. You can see the blue lines, that's in capital, and that's when we were doing the construction of the juvenile facility and then the jail and the community resilience centers as well. And then you can see in social services, of course, they're getting significant funding. A lot of that is COVID related, but there's some that's not COVID related as well. Behavioral health. So yeah, you can see kind of there's a lot going on there. Okay, now we're going to move to expenses and talk about salaries and benefits first.
This was another area your board had some requests to drill down into of the increases in salaries and benefits. What portion of that was where your priority lies in both law enforcement and public safety as a whole? So we have some slides for you. So the first slide is one. Why do I have a different color? Because I'm on the wrong page. The first one is just showing you overall the increase, and this is just regular salaries, does not include benefits, so that you can see how it has increased over the years. Just numbers right out of the finance system. As you can see, the 17-year growth is 3%, but when you look at the last, say, 3 years, there's a 10% growth in there, and we can get more into the next slide. So in this is where specifically you had asked to really drill down and have a little bit more information. So you can see that we are showing the last 5 years of just the sheriff office salaries, and then you have all of the public safety wheel is adopted by the board, and then we show you the non-public safety just salary increases. And, there's some questions. Your board did make investments in order to get those positions in law enforcement filled. You don't necessarily see it in the years that you made those investments because it takes time for them to recruit, get through the process, and actually get them on, and then get them on staff and get them out there and trained and out there. So that's why while you may have made certain investments in certain years, you don't see that impact right away because you got to wait till you get them on staff because these are those actual numbers. You can see that the biggest increase is in your public safety, which is the board's priority. Then we get into salaries and benefits. Remembering benefits is everything from PERS, the percentage, the fixed cost, Social Security, cafeteria. You'll see the growth. Again, the 17-year average from when we start, 3.5%. The 3-year average is almost 9%. And then we drill down again, as requested by the board, to show you just the increase in the sheriff's cost centers. This is all of his cost centers. Again, in the public safety departments, and then down below, which are non-public safety. And again, you see where your board made the priority of investing in public safety. That's where you do see those bigger increases than what you might see below. And again, remember, it's the hiring and some of the non-public safety too, as we were able to fill some of those positions due to vacancies. You would see and realize the payroll. Yep.
Supervisor Kirk, do we have a question, or do we want to wait to the end? Okay.
And then just as a general reminder, when you look at salaries and benefit increases, remember we have a 5-step program, so people naturally progress through those steps. There's also other components of pay that they may earn, especially in your public safety, as they move through the different types of trainings that they take. Then there's longevity, and there's also certifications for education. That will, as they earn those different and move through their steps and earn and go back to school and do stuff, that will also naturally increase your percentage of payroll as they go through those steps.
Okay, the other big expense category is services and supplies. These are expenses for a department to operate. Things like liability insurance, contracts, utilities, rent, etc. This is all of the general fund services and supplies since 2008. Again, this excludes those big grant-funded cost centers, but as I mentioned in the revenue side, there are a lot of grants in a lot of departments. I think every department has a grant, at least one. And so when there's the revenue that comes in, there's also a matching expense. And so you see a significant increase in services and supplies for our general fund departments, but that is almost exclusively related to grants. So if and when the grant goes away at some point, then those expenses also go away. And this is just something that actually Sean put together, which is extremely helpful, I think. So going back here, you see that there was a 23% increase in services and supplies from last year to this year. And so this is the reason why. About $7 million and $4.1 million is exclusively grants that we could easily identify. And then $1 million is department software. 650 of that is in IT, but again, that is paid for out of the IT internal service fund. $800,000 was because our insurance premium went up, which you would have seen in the previous slides. $380,000 was for various professional services, and then these ones had offsetting grant revenue. $230,000 was in air pollution control for some necessary required services that are being provided out of there. $215,000 is because the contract for the jail medical services that we're required to have, that cost went up. $200,000 is just because of increases in AB 109 revenue or AB 109 expenses, but with offsetting revenue from the AB 109 funding. And then $190,000 is because of photocopy leases that we do, but that really was just a reallocation. So all that to say is while there's a significant increase in services and supplies, it's almost exclusively offset by other types of revenue. Okay, and then we wanted to talk about allocated positions. This is the number and type of positions by department. It's categorized by what we call full-time equivalents, or FTEs is generally how we refer to it. These are all of the FTEs in the general fund and how they're broken out. So again, your board's priority is public safety, and you can see 58% of the positions that we have are in public safety, well over the majority. This is again just in the general fund. And then you can see the general government. Those are all of the other cost centers that comprise general government. You can see 77% are in CDD, 4% in IT, 4% in facilities, 3% in recreation, 2% in library. A total of 442 FTEs in the general fund. This is the history of the allocated positions since 1987. This was the data that we could go back to. Started at 562 positions in 1987. We're now at 750.6 allocated positions. And of course, this is the big reason for that. The big reason for the kind of camel hump in the middle is because that was when we were providing medical services, primarily through Tuolumne General Hospital, but other facilities as well. So if you remove those FTEs out of the medical services, and you can see how things have grown or reduced over the years. This is broken out, that same information, but broken out by general fund versus non-general fund. So that top kind of brownish line is the general fund positions. You can see one of the spikes, there's various reasons for a lot of those spikes, but one of them is when we added 12 and a half positions to the juvenile hall, because that's when we opened the juvenile hall. And then you can see the growth of the non-general fund departments over the years. This was another one that the board really wanted to see. We have not, again, reiterating the manual process that a lot of this data is, how we get a lot of this data is manually. We have not necessarily tracked super well our grant funded positions, in the sense that we know who's grant funded at this day, and we know what's, but when we look at, historic information, certainly back to 2008, which is what your board wanted us to start with, kind of the recession times, we did not have that data of grant funded positions. But we were able to go back at least to 2017 for when our grant funded positions were, and I bet departments could fill in probably further back, but this is where we got. So you can see how grant funded positions have grown or not grown over the years. These are all funds. And then these are today the grant funded positions that we have by function. So we have 7 positions that in public safety function. Those are our victim witness staff. And those are in the general fund. We have one, as I mentioned, Sean, in the county administrator's office, who is in the general fund. There are 3 in OES that are grant funded positions, and 2 in the master stewardship agreement, which are also in the general fund. And then there is currently 1 allocated position in the community development department that's a grant funded position to help with the REAP program. Yeah. And then there are currently 7 positions in health and human services that are grant funded, for a total of 21 positions grant funded of that 442 of the 750. Sorry. You're up. Sorry.
Okay. So one of the areas that you had asked was to kind of drill down into, again, where the board's priorities are and really getting into that. So this next slide shows you where we've separated out public safety, general CDD facilities. You can see the number of positions over the years, growth or lack thereof. And so you can see, we started out where the board's priority, public safety at 219, they're at 258 right now. Again, demonstrating the board's focus and priority on public safety. The next slide takes us, drills down a bit further into who is in public safety. So you see it's sheriff, probation, DA, animal control, public defender. Again, you can see the growth in the positions in the area of which your board's priority and where you've had focus. And then the next slide goes further into just the sheriff's cost centers. So you can see where everything went. You can see areas where T&T funding went away. The deputies were moved up into the sheriff's cost center. Same thing. We used to have court security in their fund. Now we handle a bit different. That spike there is not additional positions. They're just moving from the cost centers that existed into the sheriff coroner. And then you can see the increase for when the jail opened. Again, these are allocated positions. These are not filled positions. And so overall, you see a growth here of about 13 positions in just the sheriff's cost centers over the years. And then these are all other funded positions. And sorry, I'm just going to keep going here. And you can see again the growth in each of the other funds and or lack thereof. They kind of go up and down a bit. With the biggest one, we know that Health and Human Services is just the safety net, and the needs of those out there, the vulnerable populations, continues to grow, and they've had to add positions as a result, especially during COVID.
Also, I think it's just important to highlight the blue line there in the middle. That's the road fund. And you can see back in 2008, I think you've probably heard this before from a public works director, that there were 59 positions, and then there's now currently 48. Okay, so now we're going to look at these multi-year outlooks that we've been doing, and these are projecting into the future. This is using the data that we just went over with our actuals, analyzing what percentage growth we have, and then using that to project into the future. Before we get into it, I just want you to know that we excluded certain departments from the projections. That's because these are exclusively grant-funded departments. And so, I will use the Master Stewardship Agreement Cost Center as an example. We see significant growth in there. And so if we were to include that in the projection, that's going to really throw off our projection numbers. And so these are all of the cost centers that are excluded from everything that you'll see coming up. So again, we're going to break this up into revenue projections and then expense projections. So revenue, we're going to talk about general and departmental revenues. These are all of the components that go into or that went into projecting future budgets. So there's, again, the revenues and there's the expenses. Again, we're going to talk about general and departmental revenues for now. So general revenues. So we met, we meet all the time. Well, I'm not going to say all the time. We meet multiple times a year, 4-ish, 5-ish times a year as a revenue team. The revenue team is comprised of your auditor controller, Donnie McNair, your treasurer tax collector, your assessor recorder, and then the CAO. And we look at our existing revenues. Well, so what we did, we met again in November in preparation for this projection, because your board had said if the sales tax measure didn't pass, you wanted to be presented with this presentation, which is why we're here today. And so we met end of November. We did 4 things. We reviewed, again, our 23-24 actuals. We reviewed our 24-25 actuals to date, so by the end of November. We adjusted the 24-25 revenue projections from what your board had approved and adopted, if there was any needed changes based on actuals we had received. And then we projected, based on all of that, we projected what we think might happen next year, 25-26, as far as revenue growth. And again, these 4 main buckets of general revenues, I just want to talk about what the team is projecting. So the property tax, we are projecting no change for this current year. So still a 4.75% growth. And then next year, we're also projecting, or your assessors specifically is projecting another 4.75% growth in property tax. That's consistent with what you saw previously, where property tax generally grows between 4 and 5% every year. Sales tax, when we met as a team and we reviewed actuals, we realized that we, at the adopted budget that we presented to your board, we had projected a 2% increase in sales tax. And once we had all of the actuals, we realized that was not realistic. So we actually are recommending, and we'll bring this to your board. Well, yeah, this will be a part of, budget conversations when we look at like year end. But we are projecting that sales tax will actually reduce by $130,000 based on what we presented to your board at the adopted budget for this current year. And then in 25-26, you saw that, in 25-26, we're also anticipating no growth in sales tax next year. Transient occupancy tax, we increased it by $600,000 for fiscal year 24-25. And this was again based on looking at actuals as well as looking at any newly open resorts and other implications related to TOT. And I'm looking at that and realizing that we just yesterday made changes to this second bullet point. So in 25-26, we are anticipating growth to TOT. And here it says 900,000 to 1.3 million. It's actually a little bit more than that. And I'll talk you through that when we get to the actual projection numbers. But that is also looking at our anticipated TOT growth, resorts, and other types of facilities that charge TOT. And then A87, we were looking at no change, of course, for this fiscal year, but next year, as I mentioned, we are looking at probably a reduction in A87. It's hard to calculate. It's actually Donnie's office that does the calculations and works with a consultant to do that. But we are anticipating a reduction in about $1 million of A87. And remember that A87 is 14% of your general revenues. So a reduction by $1 million is a pretty significant reduction overall to general revenues. So you've seen about a 6% growth in general revenues, but we are projecting only around like a 3% growth overall in general revenues, primarily because of sales and then a reduction in A87. Okay, so the assumptions that are going into, the revenue assumptions that are going into the projection, General revenues, as we just discussed, about a 3% growth based on actuals to date. And as I mentioned, the TOT, those numbers changed just slightly yesterday, so it's nearer 3% rather than 2.7. But we are anticipating about a 4% growth in general revenues in fiscal year 26-27 and 27-28. And then there is additional TOT revenue that we are anticipating as a result of new development. And then departmental revenues, we are projecting that those will increase by about 4.5%. annually. And I just want to highlight this. So again, as your board directed us to meet with, or to bring this presentation back to you after the sales tax measure, the departments all looked at their budgets for next year for 25-26, and they submitted, almost all of the departments except for 2, submitted anticipated budgets. And so the departmental revenues that we are projecting are a result of the numbers that came from your departments. So this include, and it also includes fee increases that your board approved in like environmental health and standard park. This 4.5% also is based on historic trends. We try to exclude grants as much as possible. As I mentioned, that's like an artificial inflator, so we try to take out grants. And then a couple other things for your board to consider, and why we looked at the 4.5% growth is that state budgets are anticipated really to be status quo. You know, the governor just released his. It's pretty status quo is what we're hearing from CSAC. And then the federal budget, of course, is unknown, and that most likely would have implications, if there's any changes to the federal budget, would have implications in health and human services, if there are any at all, which of course is not in the general fund, but just for your board to be aware. So that is all of the assumptions that we put into projecting the budget on the revenue side. Oops, sorry. So now on the expense side, we already went over salaries and benefits and services and supplies. You saw that growth over the last handful of years. So I'm going to hit these other ones: debt service, transfers out, contingencies, reserves, and fund balance. So first, debt service. This is the slide that you saw in July. The payment in the 24-25 adopted budget for debt service is $2.4 million. This is the county's current debt. The original amount you can see there. We have 3 debt from the Jamestown mine, from paying off a portion of our unfunded liability specific for safety tier 1 employees, and then law and justice when we went out to bond to build the jail. And you can see when they are anticipated to be, the debt is anticipated to be paid off. And then this is the history over the years and our future debt payments. Then transfers out. So this is, again, this is what is in the projection that you'll see in just a second. So I'll start with the bottom ones first. Those are those pass-throughs and maintenances of effort where that your board is required to contribute to those other departments. And then at the top, so there's county fire, county capital, and then there has been a little bit to Pine Mountain Lake. This number, I'll just say, is the exact same number that was in the budget in 24-25. I'm not sure we're going to need that, but we just kept it as it was. County fire, we have historically contributed, the number that we've thrown out lately is $750,000 of general revenues that go to fire to help balance fire. We're going to talk a lot about fire in a second, but it has never actually ended up to be $750,000. You may recall this year to balance fire, we contributed about $1 million that we had left over of American Rescue Plan funding. So it has, for the last couple years, it has been in the neighborhood of $2 million that has gone to fire to help balance the fire fund and for fire operations. And so we increased the transfers out amount to be $2 million just to be more realistic. We also put $1 million toward capital, which is something that's been relatively consistent for the last handful of years. And again, capital fund, the only funding that comes in is what's transferred in. And so any capital improvement projects are what gets put in there by general revenues or some of your other funds. So that $1 million is consistent with what we did in the past. Yeah. And then lastly is contingencies. So just a reminder, the board's budget policy is that general fund contingencies should be budgeted at no less than 1% of the general fund operating budget. This excludes grant funded cost centers, again, those ones that I listed. And so just about $1 million is required in the general fund to meet the board's budget policy. This year in the 24-25 adopted budget, it contingencies were budgeted at $1.4 million. And there's currently $1.2 million in contingencies because your board pulled some out for that ADA plan that was required through risk management. And so this assumes in contingencies, when we look at putting those projections together, we put about $1 million, or we put exactly $1 million in contingencies to meet your board's budget policy. And then this is something that I think it was Supervisor Brandon who had asked to see. This is a trend of contingencies over the years. Contingencies, your board has a lot of discretion over, which is why I think you see those significant spikes. But the orange line is the board's budget policy, or like the target. And then the blue is how they've been funded over the years. So you can see you're almost always funded over your board's target.
Okay, the next one is, again, a board budget policy, and it's related to your reserves. So currently, the policy states that we will establish reserves at 7% of total operating budgets for all governmental funds, not just the general fund, less capital. So we have strived, used to be there was a policy to put $250,000 aside every year. The board had changed that to make that $500,000 per year going into reserves. And so what you will see on the next slide is where we should be is about $13.8 million. We're at $5.5 million. While that is a big jump from where we were, say, in 2018-19, it's still far from what we need to have into reserves, but it has been steadily growing. Oh, the next one is our, sorry, I'm getting caught up here. So the next one is a budget policy related to use of fund balance. So as you can see, we show you what the fund balance has been historically. And what you see on the right is what we're calling that margin of error. Where you see the largest margin of error is where we had COVID monies coming in from the CARES Act, actual ARP, and then straight departmental allocations. What happened during that time was many of the COVID funding was able to pay for normal and customary services. Therefore, we weren't using general fund dollars, and that's where you would see those biggest changes in your estimated fund balance. The other thing to remember is when we're estimating fund balance, we work with departments, they give us those numbers. We'll give you that when we go into year end. However, we don't actually pull the funds from departments. We estimate what we think it will be, but we don't go in there and pull it because honestly, you don't know if they're going to need it. We're giving you that estimate around April. So in this, what we used to do historically in the past was fund balance was never used to balance next year's operating budget. Departments had been consistently voicing their concern that there is always some level of fund balance. So could you not consider some percentage of that as being recurring and not one time? We did bring that to the budget committee. Budget committee made a recommendation to the board. The board adopted where we could use a 10-year rolling average up to 50% of that 10-year rolling average of fund balance. And in that calculation you see before you right there, that excludes those years where it was abnormally high due to the COVID funding that was coming directly into departments. So this would say that the 10-year average fund balance is $3.1 million, which means that the budget policy, we would expect to use $1.6 million of that to help balance the next fiscal year.
Okay, so now I'm going to talk a little bit about, based on all of this information, what we assumed in the multi-year projection related to expenses. Okay, so in what you're going to see in just a second, this assumes that all positions are filled as of July 1st. This also assumes that salaries and benefits will increase by 5%. We are calling that a status quo or static wages, even though there is an increase. You heard CAO Riggs mention that we have our STEP system for employees. We have about half of our employees who are at step 5. So the other half will be working through their steps. But everybody is eligible for all kinds of other, like education incentives or other kinds of components of pay. There's a lot of factors. And then, of course, when we look at salaries and benefits, that also includes that PERS fixed payment. It also includes workers' comp, those things that are largely outside of our control that also go into increases that we might see in the overall salaries and benefits category. So we are projecting 5%, but that that does not include any cost of living or compensation adjustments. We're estimating services and supplies will increase by 8%. That's a slight reduction to those percentages that you saw earlier. So really what we're saying is that status quo operations. We're not growing, we're maintaining our operations at the same level, or in some cases maybe less. We also are assuming that debt service will remain constant, that $2.4 million payment, that's what we will be projecting, or that's what we'll be paying into the future. It also includes those transfers out, which is limited to those maintenances of effort that I mentioned in the previous slide, as well as $2 million to county fire and $1 million to county capital. It also assumes that contingencies are unused, and so that they will be rebudgeted or they will roll forward into the following years. And then it also assumes that fund balance remains consistent with that 10-year rolling average of about $3 million that you heard in the previous slide. So with all of that, here is the general fund multi-year outlook. And I just want to, I just want to say that projecting budgets, as you've heard, hopefully you've gathered by now, it's quite, there's a lot of unknowns. And so while you see these numbers here, as I mentioned, these numbers are different than the numbers that we had over the weekend, which is different than the numbers that we had when we shared with department heads a week ago. Things adjust as we get new information, and we're trying to stay on top of things, but these numbers will undoubtedly be different from what you see, say, in April, May, when we start bringing you the first look at the adopted budget for 25-26. We have two budget projections here. We have Outlook 1, Outlook 2. What we're calling Outlook 1 is conservative TOT projections, looking at specifically our TOT revenue, being a bit more on the conservative side for what we think we'll see as far as new development. And then the other one is the less conservative TOT projections, creatively named, and it's exactly what it sounds like. So, and I want to highlight one other thing. The services and supplies number, you can see it's actually going down. We're projecting it to go down from 25-26 to what it is this year. That, again, is because your departments submitted their anticipated budgets. They didn't have a lot of time, so, this is one of those areas where I could see there was maybe some errors here and there. But that number came from your departments, except for, with the exception of 2. And then same with departmental revenues. So those also went down. And again, those are primarily because of the grants that were budgeted this year. Again, the encampment resolution funds is one that comes to mind because it's significant, but there are plenty of others. And then you can see those others that we talked about: debt service, the transfers out, the contingencies, the reserves, and then our anticipated fund balance. So this is what we're projecting for shortfalls in the coming years. And then this is the less conservative projection. So if TOT came in even better than maybe the conservative perspective, this is what we would see as far as shortfalls in the coming 3 years. Yeah. And then we want to talk about fire a little bit. So we also did the same type of exercise. Fire is not quite as complex because, it's the one service, and we primarily contract out with CAL FIRE for those services. And so this is what we are projecting for. We did a 2-year projection because we only have a 3-year contract with CAL FIRE for this year, next year, and then the following year. So this is what we are looking at. And so we have 4 different scenarios for county fire. This is status quo. So this is 5 engines. You can see there the second line down. This maintains all 5 engines that your board has. You can see in 25-26, we would use the remainder of the SAFER grant, and then it drops off after that, which is why you see a significant increase in the shortfall. Yes, I'm sorry. It also includes the $2 million, the increase from the general fund to $2 million from $750. So this is then a projection if we were to reduce from 5 engines to 4 engines. The big notable difference here is that we cannot use SAFER grant any longer if we do that. If we reduce our numbers at all, then we're not able to use the remainder of SAFER grant, so that revenue goes away. But you can see what we would project in a shortfall there. This is 4 engines at 2 staff, mostly. This is This is if we were to reduce by 2 engines, so to get us to 3 engines, what our shortfall would be. Again, we cannot use the remainder of SAFER grant, still includes the $2 million transfer out from the general fund. And then this is lastly, if we were to go to our pre-SAFER grant with only 2 engines, what the shortfall would be. Okay, we're nearly there. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so we tried to look at another way of doing a projection because there's many ways we could look at this. One of the other questions I've had from board members too is how much of our discretionary spending is going towards our priorities of public safety. So on the next slide, this was something I worked on over the weekend, which essentially just shows what are your public safety wheel. And then it shows you right now you're spending essentially 33% of your discretionary revenue on just law enforcement. And then the bottom one shows just the public safety wheel. This is important because we know that your board has made public safety a priority, and it does reflect that your board is sticking with that priority. What you say is important is what you're spending your money on, and I think that this chart helps to reflect that. The other thing I wanted you to see was that mandated cost line. So it just gives you an idea of when you look at these departments, what portion of their budget is mandated costs. So if you look at, say, just the sheriff with all of his cost centers, he has a $32 million budget with all of his cost centers. $7 million of that, or 22%, is outside his control. Those are mandated costs, workers' comp liabilities, fixed purse cost, and it goes down for everyone. So 20% of your public safety budget is mandated costs. So this is just another way to kind of break it down for you to look at what is the cost driver, and then what are those net county costs. So the first column is your total expense. The next column is that net cost. The difference is the departmental revenues. That net cost is the portion that you're using your discretionary revenues to cover the shortfall. And then this next one is all of your other departments. I know it's kind of busy here, but essentially you can see again, when you look at the adopted budget, that net cost on that first column in that worksheet, your mandated cost, and then the percent of budget for mandated costs of their budget. And in here, just to bring your attention to, remember when we make changes or even eliminate a department, that second column doesn't go away. We reallocate it out like we did, say, for ORR to other departments. So finally, you can see we had $74 million. That does include fund balance. For 24-25, your public safety was $33.5 million. Your remaining departments were 40. You did put $500,000 into reserves. That's how we balanced this fiscal year. So just as a high level look at this. So then what I did was, again, another way to look at this, and this would be a constrained budget still, if you were to increase every single cost center by that 7.4%, what would be a projection if you look at it in a different way? And that's where, in this one, it's not a whole lot different, about $1 million more. So you'd have $76.5 million and your projected revenues for 25-26. We would estimate that your public safety needs would increase to $36 million, non-safety to $43.5, again, $500 to reserves, which would give us a shortfall of $3.7 million. So just a different way to look at it. Again, this is all of your allocated positions fully funded as of July 1st. And it is a constrained budget, but only in telling people you're really just going to not increase more than that net county cost that you would see in that 7.4%, and then in that other for your public safety. So what are we looking to the board for today? First, obviously we want to hear your questions, your comments. Is there anything here that we didn't drill down enough? Is there information that's just not here at all that we can bring back to you? And then we do have on here the mid-year budget review we'll be doing in February. You have in May, we bring to you the year-end budget review and estimated fund balance. In June is when we will ask your board to adopt the budget. What we do start in March is we'll start creating that budget model now, and we'll ask departments to start working in March on their 25-26 budget. So that means between now and March, I'll be looking to your board for direction on what you would like that new budget to look like. That means, of course, services and supplies and everything takes, excuse me, to deliver those services. And I'm trying to think, is there anything else I forgot? I think that's it. And we're just looking forward to your questions and then direction.
Appreciate that, and thank you for the presentation. Shortly, in a little bit, we'll move into question and discussion with the board. Going to end up doing a little 5-minute bio break there, so we'll be back at 11:22. For any of the department heads and staff in the room, if you had items that were on this within your purview, just be ready when we come back. We might call on you to speak up and come up too. So, all right, we're recessed for a little bit. All right, everybody, if you can please take your seats. To the board members, no more schmoozing. There we go. Great. All right. We're pretty much on time for coming back, and I appreciate everybody with that. I like taking little 5-minute breaks every now and then. Good to stretch the legs. So before we get into this, I did have a couple things that I wanted to mention specifically with this slide. So the first is we do have a bargaining item on the agenda. So just a reminder to the board and to staff as well. Discussion of any employee positions in that has to be done through a bargaining session. So just to make sure that we're avoiding that, this is at the advice of our CAO and legal counsel as well. Make sure we're holding that. As mentioned, the priority survey going out, I believe it is an anonymous survey to all staff at the county for process improvement, also to our department heads for ideas, and then I believe going out after this meeting for all of the board's ideas. We do have on the meeting item today, discussion, presentation, and direction. Direction, of course, means we can direct stuff to happen, but to avoid it being a shooting gallery with it, that's the way to hopefully have an organized process, and within 2 to 3 weeks, having those priority surveys come back where we know where the folks are at, and basically then being able to have a discussion about our 2-year priority list and any amendments to that. Last bit is just to recognize that a lot of the ideas we may be talking about within that probably fit within 4 buckets. Each bucket is which process it needs to follow, right? One of them being upcoming, as mentioned by March, is the budget bucket. That is going to be right on us, happens at the same time, highly structured. We also have the bargaining bucket, which can happen at any time, but only within that time period. We have structural ones, which would be anything programmatic, contracts, efficiencies, restructuring, anything like that may be happening in between. And the last, of course, would be any type of revenue growth strategy. So just keeping in mind that those 4 buckets may happen at different times, and we need to address them at those. So with that, I will bring it back to the board. If there are any questions and comments, staff will not be limited to the 3 minutes in being able to present, and any board member can request anybody in the room, thank you for hanging in with us too, to come up and present more information. Mike? You looked at me first.
I will not make that mistake again. Let me see. I got a couple of them here. You might have to come back to me later. But what is our total PERS debt dollar amount right now? Roughly, just rough numbers.
And just to our new board members too, make sure the mic's right there because they're not good if you're off to the side.
You have the last
Yep.
presentation.
And then folks at home can't hear us.
Yeah, I know at one point we were saying, we think it may be 150, but I remember 120 for sure. But she's going to look up the last presentation.
120 to 150 million.
Yeah.
Okay. And is there a percentage? What's the percentage per year we have to pay of that? Is it because you said it's increasing? So are they increasing the percentage amount, or
They increase both. So public safety and the miscellaneous group each increase. We can get that for you. I just don't know off the top of my head. We do utilize that and keyed into the budget, so it calculates everything correctly.
And then on the A87 fund, I know you were saying that the general funds do not pay into that. I know we keep fire in a separate fund. Are they paying in the A87?
Yep.
Okay, thanks. I'll find my other notes. But so basically what I gathered out of this, looking at the revenues versus our expenses coming from the private sector, I would call this a going out of business plan, that our expenses are way exceeding our revenues. So obviously structural changes will have to occur, but I got some more questions I'll get to later, but I know Naya's got a couple, I'm sure.
Supervisor Kirk? All right, then we'll go to, I don't know, he tagged them in.
I'll try and be quick. I am bouncing around a little bit. I got this last night, so I'm trying to take notes and clarify anything. Real quick, let's just go through it real fast. Some of these are in the weeds, some of them will be bigger. Number 4, it says capital housing. What is the housing? I just want to be clear what the 930,585 is.
That was a fund that we set up to do capital improvements for utilizing CARE Act and opioid litigation funding. Any capital work that we do related, well,
Is it
not
homeless
all,
housing,
not all
or is it
homeless,
any-
some, yeah, behavioral health as well. And then you'll recall like the Columbia Way that we purchased for veterans. So, yeah.
You're good. We'll keep it short and simple. If I don't need more, I'll ask you. Slide number 5, when I was looking at governmental funds, county roads, monument, Tuolumne County Fire, my question is, could any kind of line item be placed in a governmental fund? And where I'm going with this is I see Tuolumne County Fire is in here. Could I add the sheriff as a line item in here instead of including them in the general fund, even though it's generally funded?
Yes, you're asking, can you make a specific department its own fund?
Yes.
I can't think of a reason why you could not. I was looking at Sarah, both, I can't think of any budget reason that you could not do that, accounting reason. The board can delegate if you wanted to move, just like you could move, say, fire into the general fund.
Okay. And then on Tuolumne County Fire, I don't know if I missed it. Like I said, I was trying to read this and listen and all the above. But on the 10 million, is there a breakdown anywhere in this presentation where it talks about the number of positions within Tuolumne County Fire, in addition, because I think there's 4 or 5, but in addition to our contract, the positions and where the funding comes from, and kind of just a whole kind of organic picture of that, including what their, is there liability insurance, is there PERS? I don't believe there is because of the contract, but is there anywhere in here that I missed it? Or if I didn't, could we add kind of like a little slide specifically about Tuolumne County Fire so we're clear on?
There is one on positions for fire. And you'll see the total number of positions it's funding. I believe, do we have 5 positions that are county employees? So
Right.
all the rest are through contract. And there was something that I had provided to each of you in a worksheet where I showed that that fire pays 6.4% of their total budget into mandated costs. That is significantly lower than your other public safety because those costs are actually part of the contract. So we have limited exposure for workers' comp and liability only to our 5 employees because they carry that as part of the contract. And that's what you see in that $10 million number that's right there.
Okay, but we could
We could definitely dive into that.
dive into that one a little bit more. Okay, that'll be something I'll bring up later for recommendation. On slide number 10, we see PERS fixed payment forecasts. We see where we're at, and then we see a trends and projections. And when I saw this one, but then as I was going through a lot of the other graphs, most of them end with current, 2024, like slide 26, slide 27. I know we're doing some projections, but could we, I guess maybe, why didn't we maybe do what we did here on the other trends? We just kind of ended everything in 2024. Could we add projections? That way I'm not having to go to the beginning or the end of the presentation. It's just kind of there in one for a projection.
You're asking, can we take the other slides and project out further?
Yeah, just keep going. Just like we did here. Could we just keep going on basically any slide that's in here? Could we just, and I know nothing's certain, but at least maybe like 5 years out.
Okay.
It'd just be helpful. And then on this PERS fixed forecast, I don't know. I know we talked a little bit about grants in here. Do we know, there's been conversation about, once we go past 5 years with a grant, that employee becomes PERS liability fixed. Do we know with this trend line how much of that, because I know there's 20, for the presentation, there's 21 positions. Do we know what percentage or what cost amounts to this? No?
Yeah, I don't think there's any way. I was looking at Donnie was doing the PERS report to drill down to employee of what that unfunded liability would be, especially into the future.
Okay. So if we have 21 grants and 15 of them are over 5 years, we don't know what that value would be for our liability.
We
for
could try
liability?
and estimate it. We could estimate
Okay.
what we might think it would be. Talk.
Well, then,
Yeah, I think we could put something together to get kind of an average per employee per years of service and then allocate that based on how many employees are in that position.
okay. Okay, slide 18. When we start talking about property tax growth, and then on slide 20, sales tax growth, is there anywhere, and maybe Mike had saw this and I wasn't capturing it, do we have a general idea on, where's the slide that shows all growth, including all this? Did I miss that somewhere? When you take sales tax, revenue, all the revenues, do we have a percentage?
There it is. So
Did I miss it somewhere?
This slide has all of your general revenue growth, so
Revenue, so that includes sales tax?
Correct.
Everything, okay. Let me get to that real quick.
general
Right.
revenues would be your discretionary revenue, so includes property tax, sales tax, TOT, PILT, 87, and then franchise fees, everything that would be your discretionary revenues.
Okay, and then where's the slide that shows expenditures for
There is
general?
There are two, it's salaries and benefits. Did we do one to combine them?
Where is that one?
So this is just your salaries and benefits,
33.
and then slide 36 is your services and supplies. So there are two, but we did not add them together, which we could.
just
Yeah.
just like we separate departmental revenues from general revenues, we separated salaries and benefits and services and supplies.
So for general revenue growth, 5-year average is 7.08, and for salaries and benefits, it's 6.90 for expenditures. Is that correct? Okay. Might need some clarification. Is that correct? Am I saying that right?
Or it's just not taking into account then your services and supplies, which are above and beyond salaries and benefits, but it's the total budget. So this is your services and supplies increase. So the 5-year increase for services and supplies is that 14%. Just remember, this does include some of those mandated costs as well, also your utilities and that kind of stuff.
Okay, let me see if I have any others. Just need to clarify it. And then I needed to understand slide 27. What was it says Public Safety Department revenues. What's the revenue for the sheriff? Because it's showing 9 million. 27?
And what was your question? I'm sorry.
What is that revenue for the sheriff? It says 9 million?
I mean, it's everything else that's not backfilled by those by the general revenues. So it's a whole host of fees, the sheriff can.
Fees, okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Because it was a lot higher than I expected, so I just didn't understand.
Tagging
You have a short answer on that?
Supervisor. The short answer would be it's a combination of several funds. AB 109, AB 443, Prop 172, the Citizens Option for Protection Program, several that come from the state, not including courts, which probably total somewhere close to about 9 million.
Okay.
And that is for both sheriff, coroner, and custody.
So if you look at this slide right here, you can see the total budget just in the sheriff's cost centers is about 32 million. But he pulls in about 9 million, of departmental revenues. And of all of the things that he listed. Yeah, so then there's a net county cost of 23.5, and that's backfilled by general revenues.
Okay. Yeah, let me see if there's anything else. No big deal. Slide 40 you could probably delete because the next slide, I just noticed that. The next slide covers it. And then again, 44 was kind of back to my question, which we said we can look into, get a general estimate on those grant funded positions, what their liabilities are if they're post 5 years. Okay, general fund allocated positions, slide 45. I guess fire's not included in here, obviously because it's a general services fund.
Yeah, because they're not in the general fund.
Right, okay. And then public safety, again, fire's not included, but they are public safety. So is it just because of that, again, that same argument? Okay.
Yeah, they are. Fire is listed on slide 48. And just remember that we have the 5 county employees in fire, and then we contract out for all of the other.
Right, so 48 shows 74 fire. That's that contract?
No, I'm sorry. That's kind of a funky, that's actually behavioral health. There's a different color green, which is at the very bottom. This is just county employees.
Good, okay. That's kind of what brought up the question earlier is I thought the 74 included the
I
Cal
see.
Fire,
Sorry, yeah.
which is why I didn't know
We can
why they weren't
change
called
those
out.
colors even more, yes.
Okay. Still though, I want the Cal Fire info.
Yep.
And then on slide 53, you said your general revenues review, the review team is auditor, controller, treasurer, tax collector, assessor, recorder, CAO. Do we include the department heads in this at that beginning process, or is it just during budget?
We always talk to them, the budget team and department heads, about what we as a revenue team discussed. Like we did that with the projections. We met with them 2 weeks ago or a week and a half ago or whatever, and talked through and actually said, like, does this sound weird to you? What do you think? You know, so they're not a part of the revenue team, the traditional revenue team, no, but we always include them and ask for input.
Okay. And then let's see if any other questions.
And Supervisor Kirk, I plan if we have additional questions, we can kind of do it. Would it be okay, kind of move it to Supervisor Griefer and then we can return back?
I do have one more question, if I could do it. And this might come up more during comments. I know we have to plan ahead, but you know, when I got to slide 74, when it said reduced by 1 engine, their status quo reduced by 2 engines, I see that we're preparing to potentially reduce things because we got to talk about it. But I don't see anywhere in the budget presentation where we talk about, other than maybe the sheriff's department, but where we see a priority given to board priorities. I guess I was a little taken back that we're planning to reduce board priorities, which are fire. So
There was no plan. I just asked fire to give you options to consider. That was it. This is not a plan. There's not a recommendation for us to make any reductions at this point. As I know you each have specific ideas. This was just all of this is just meant to be information. There's no plan from our part. I did ask fire to give you options. So as we are considering, you have the numbers to know what that would look like. That's all.
yeah, I guess my question is, if fire is a priority, why are we even having, there's a million other options. So why is fire on the table as an option?
I'm not saying they are option. You have the net cost for all the other departments as well. This just gives you now the net cost to keep for fire services too. It's not meant to be that we're recommending a cut because we're not, but you have all your general fund net county costs. Now you also have the net cost for fire at various levels as well. Sorry, it's not meant to be a recommendation or any other thing other than information.
That's it. Thank you.
Great. All right, and just a clarification on this too. Once we've completed a board comment with it, I plan to open for public comment, then also for staff report. So if anybody would like to staff report loosely, come up and be able to add anything to it, and then we can kind of bring it back for the discussion. Is that okay? Sound good? Supervisor Griefer.
Thank you, Chair. So I guess we'll just start at the beginning. So page number 6, or slide number 6, this is the airport fund. As we know, we have 2 airports in the county, and one is at $1 million and one is not. For me, this falls under a public safety issue because that airport does have a value, not only just to the commerce up there, but to medical, life flights, CalDART, the nonprofit organization that flies out in an emergency. So my question is, how do we need to get that 155K up higher. And I want to know, is there a way, I know that it's, you know, there's a more dollar value to Columbia, not only from just the tourism side of it, but from the CAL FIRE side of it as too. But how do we, and do we have a plan to start putting money aside to fix that airport before Caltrans comes in and says we can't use it at night any longer or anything further?
Yeah, so far, and that's why we did that, the airport feasibility study is, and you may have been listening, the previous board had directed that they didn't really want to see any taxpayer dollars going up to that airport. So we don't have a plan for you. Doesn't mean we couldn't develop one should the board direct it. One of the big differences, of course, is the amount of funding, as you know, that we can pull into Columbia that we cannot pull into the other. So we could absolutely, right now, there is not a plan, and the concern, as you've heard us say, is if we continue with the way we are, eventually it will have to close because the deferred maintenance is becoming so significant, it would be unsafe.
Okay. And then question number 2 is for SB1 grant or gas money. I believe it's $6 million that we get for that, going off of an older slide.
It's actually 3.5.
Oh, okay.
We get another source of gas tax revenue that's about 3.5 as well, 3.
Okay, so total for gas tax would be about $6 million. So that $6 million, does that go into a specific line item specifically for the roads, or does it go in to supplement the current budget?
Yes and no. It does have its own line item, and I think Blossom is here and she can, in its own, yeah.
Good morning, Blossom Scott-Heim, your Public Works Director. All of that goes into the road fund collectively and pays for salaries, benefits, materials, and a portion of our capital project local match.
Okay, so I guess my comment would be is that if we're receiving the $6 million for the roads, we should probably use it on the roads. And I'm not saying we're not, but if it's going to salaries and things like that, that's something else that we should look at as well.
It's going to salaries for road maintenance workers.
Right.
So,
right. I'm not. Right.
yeah.
I'm just saying that, you know, if we've got this money, you know, we want to make sure that the people understand, because that's obviously the one thing every politician gets hammered on when they start running is the roads. So I just want to make sure that I understand the process. Right.
And if I could just respond on the airport question really quick.
Mm-hmm.
For those of you that were on the previous board and attended the AAC meetings, we do have a plan going forward this year to try to get compliance up at Pine Mountain Lake so that we qualify for grant funding. And that would significantly increase that budget.
Yes, but the concern is if we don't get the grant funding, we're still back at square zero.
Correct.
And so we have to come up with a way to, you know, this organization has to decide. I mean, I'm surprised that a previous board would say we're not going to put taxpayer money into a piece of property that they own. Right? We own it. It's not Pine Mountain Lake. We all know that. I've been very open about that. Change the name, right? Let's get options to do that. And so we need to look at that as an asset to this community, not just from, you know, the road or the airport bringing in financial dollars to the community, but, you know, not life flights, ambulance, you know, sheriffs having to go to respond for search and rescue, things like that. So I appreciate your candor. Thank you. So I was going to ask for the number of full-time employees and how many have increased and when, but I was going off of the slide and I don't recall which one it is. From 2010 to 2024, it looks like we've added on 120 full-time employees. Being a C student, I had to do the math the hard way. So let's just say it's a.
Is this the slide you're referring to?
Sure. No, I'm just saying in general. There's a slide that said from 87 to now we've increased our staff full-time employees by X. So I was going to go off of 2020 to now, but since you have 2010-ish, it's 570 to 750. So of that increase, where did they all go to? Now I know 12 of them were to the jail. I know we've had it on, but I mean, and I guess my real question is how many of those were grant funded that when that grant ended got converted into a full-time employee position? And I know that there's no way you could prepare for all of our questions. So if you say, I don't know, it's okay.
There's not even a way that I can think of we might be able to track it because they weren't listing them like we do now in the system as grant funded. I know that like my predecessor had a hard line. If the grant went away, so did the expense, and the board held them to that. I'm trying to think of a way that we could go look at the positions. This shows you overall by the area, the function of where those increases took place. And But when it comes to grant funded, we can look into it. I just don't know that I'm going to be able to dive in clear back to 2010.
And you could pick you said from your predecessor, so when you came on, you could tell us kind of where that is. Because that's one of the concerns is that we have grant funding.
Yeah.
Grant funding goes away. Now we absorb another person. Now we have another person in PERS. We have another person on the payroll, et cetera, et cetera. And obviously, I don't want to see anybody go away. But at some point, government has to stop consuming, has to stop growing. We have to draw that line and say, okay, this is where we're at.
Yeah.
On the TOT, how much of that is actually going to the general fund and all of that, as opposed to being siphoned off and going to other departments to supplement them?
So the whole amount goes into the general revenues, which is the general fund. We don't track that discretionary revenue. That's part of the 67 million. We could tell you how much is going to each department, but we wouldn't be able to tell you how they're spending that. So we gave you the net county cost. That would be the amount of discretionary revenues going to cover each of those departments.
Okay. On slide number 62, the Pine Mountain Lake, what's the 15K for?
That is to balance them. That's the amount that they are short in the fund from the transfer, either from Columbia. They are in two separate funds, so each fund has to balance by itself. So it's the small amount that's needed to balance.
Okay, thank you. And then my last question for now would be on slide number 80, where the transfer out, the very last one that says transfer out, is that a combined total of 18%? Or is that just a specific line item of 18%?
So that's an 18% increase from the 2025 adopted budget to what we are projecting. And that number actually, again, changed slightly. And it actually, as far as our projections, this is the number that it should be, 7.8.
Okay, so the 18, I'm just curious as why this big, if everything else is 7.4 or what it was 3, why 18%?
Because we included this, because we had to do all of the pass-throughs and maintenances of effort.
Okay.
And then we increased the transfer out to fire from 750,000 to 2 million.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That's all for me, Chair.
Great. And Liz, really quick, could you define maintenance effort?
Yeah, I mean, Tracy can.
So there, yeah. So what we've seen in like 1991 realignment and 2011 realignment, there is a specific amount that the state expects that you will continue contributing in order to receive that new state revenue. Same thing happened with roads. When SB1 came in, we had to do a calculation about what the amount that we were already funding, an average amount, that had to remain constant. That's what those are.
Thank you.
Think of it really as like a match for a grant.
A mandated match, basically.
Yes, exactly.
Right? Yeah.
Yep.
Supervisor Campbell?
Thank you, Chair. And I wanted to start out by thanking you, Tracy, Liz, and Donnie for putting this together. This is extremely comprehensive. I see people in the audience reading through this packet. If you want to get an idea and a picture of how our county's finances work, revenues and expenditures, this is the best way to do it. Didn't used to be this way. It used to be kind of nebulous, and we would have to kind of figure things out and read through the lines. And it's right here in black and white with charts and colors and really vibrant graphics. So this is really good. I think it's one of the best presentations on our finances I think we've ever had. So I really appreciate that. A lot of work obviously went into this. Question I have is, and I don't know, I wasn't keeping track of slides, so I'm just going to freewheel it here. Okay. So Supervisor Kirk kind of brought up something, and I sort of have the same question in the opposite direction. Is why is fire not a general fund expenditure? Because it seems like we're, as pretty much, I think as long as I've been on the board, we've been transferring out hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars into the fire fund as though somehow fire safety is a temporary thing that we're just doing in the meantime until we figure out how to make the forest safe and we don't need fire stations and fire engines. It just seems like it's kind of like we're kidding ourselves that there will be some point where we won't have to transfer money out from the general fund into fire. So doesn't it make more sense to include fire as a, instead of having a separate fund included under the general fund expenditures?
So yes, I think that does make sense. And the answer to that is, and I don't like this answer. The reason it's in its own fund is because that's where it has been for decades.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean it needs to stay that way. And so, but that's
We
why
always
it's
did
there.
it that way.
I mean, we have not moved it, but you know,
One of
you
those
could make
phrases I
that.
don't like about
yeah.
government.
I mean, for all of those other funds, they also, you know, we transfer out to roads. You know, same. It's a special revenue fund. It wasn't until these last, you know, I'll say since we actually increased even to Jamestown, that was the first SAFER grant where the board was putting money towards fire in a different way from what with the dedicated revenues. That happened probably maybe 10 years ago. We started seeing an increase in the contribution from the general fund. We have never had a conversation about moving it until more recently of does that something the board wants to consider of rather than this us and them and trying to transfer out, do you just make it a department in the general fund? And that is under your authority to decide.
Okay, and thank you. That was kind of what I had assumed, and so I appreciate you explaining that. And then, kind of at the very beginning of your presentation, you talked about our discretionary fund, and you know, of that 300x number million available, about 68 million is actually discretionary. But then of that, a huge percentage of that is mandated cost. And so the word discretionary and the word mandated to me are kind of antonyms. And so why do we include those mandated costs under discretionary general fund revenues? Why don't we just take that out?
You mean net it. So essentially you would have $50 million to work with. There are instances in which, you know, you can use some departmental revenues, but that are not tied to direct services for some of those costs because they are direct costs for say, delivering the service. It could be we net it out and say, subtract out your mandated costs for the general fund and it's 50 million because it's about 17. Is that what we said? No, 17 million for general fund, I think is the number for mandated costs. Yeah, so it would be about 50 million really that you have. And that is part of that net county cost in each of those cost centers that you saw.
Okay, because to me, that's what I try to hammer home to my constituents a lot, is that they're seeing a $300 million budget and thinking that, you know, I'm at the roulette table with $300 million throwing things at priorities. Why don't I fix the roads? Why don't I? And really, it's $50 million, and it's so much less than people actually think that is discretionary that we have any control over on the board. And even then, we don't have that much control over it because there are things like public safety, things that we have to do that are discretionary, but it's not really that discretionary.
And the other part that's not of that 17 million would be, you know, utilities, propane, you know, electricity, all of those types of things that are fixed costs.
Paying our bills. And,
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, those are just those fixed costs. I mean, the service and supply, salaries and benefits, you can control more, but you know, some of that other, the departments are paying that no matter what. You know, the sheriff's going to pay to keep the lights on at the jail no matter what. That's a fixed cost for him. He doesn't have discretion to not cut there, right? Just like you wouldn't be able to say, turn off the lights for a week here. You could, but it might not go over well.
Yeah. And then another question is, one of the bigger, I guess, shockers to me was the reduction in the A87. $1 million. You may have gone over it, but I didn't catch why is that so much less next year or coming into this next year than it was previous years? Because to me, 87 was, well, that doesn't look very consistent, but I was going to say, in my mind, it was usually pretty consistent, but I guess it's not.
It's never been consistent. I remember when I was not in the general fund and getting that allocation, how I responded to that. It jumped up because we talked about those investments, not just in IT, but even increasing the facilities deferred maintenance. We increased that to almost $1 million a year. That is part of that calculation that gets allocated out to everyone else. So by moving the servers and the software costs out of IT's budget and into an internal service fund, we're reducing the IT budget. They'll get a direct cost for what they need for their softwares, but it won't come in the form of A87. So
is that's really costing us $1 million to do that, to pay for that? Or how does that work?
just the software alone, and I'm not sure if Mark or Mo can speak to this, just the software alone for county departments usually resides just in IT. That could be I don't even know what that, I think it's a few $1,000,000 just for software. So those are driving. You start looking at doing more servers. We start looking at additional softwares, conversions, the amount that we paid converting to the new ERP that we also then paid to Oracle to keep it up. That was millions of dollars over the years that have been in the IT fund that's been part of that A87 allocation. You're not seeing that as a big jump in staffing. There was no big jump in staffing for those departments, but those line items have significantly increased.
Okay.
We then took those out and put them in internal service fund to try and level the A87 out for those non-general fund departments. So they would be able to expect a number better. Go ahead.
And I just want to add, this is one of those components when we're projecting, it's quite challenging. And the reality of the numbers that we presented today are likely going to be different when we actually get our true A87 allocation from the auditor's office. We, again, as a revenue team, as we're discussing, what are we thinking? We reduced it by $1 million just in anticipation for what we know or what we think will likely happen, but we don't really know when it comes to A87. And I just also want to remind your board that the A87, how it's allocated, is actually 2 years in arrears. And so we are getting to the point now where we created that ITISF internal service fund about 2 years ago. And so that's why we think we're going to start to see that decline in A87 now from actions that your board took 2 years ago.
Okay. All right. Now, and then my last question is kind of, I'm going to lay out a scenario and you tell me if this is accurate or not. It seems to me that this current fiscal year, we're sort of normal, what to me is normal because we went through a lot of cut years, but the real kicker is when the SAFER grant ends. And so, I mean, is that correct to you that finding a way to either backfill or make reductions in relation to the loss of the SAFER grant in 26, should that be our overarching goal? Or what would you recommend that we focus in on? Because I mean, that's, $3.8 million on the low end. Because, and going to, I think it was Supervisor Kirk's question that why are you recommending these cuts? I didn't interpret it that way. I interpreted this as an illustration of the costs that we're facing and that we need to find a way to make that work. Is that sort of where you're coming at?
Well, I think there's a couple of things here. We have been skirting the issue of not keeping up with our revenues. We've been talking about this for years and just the general fund. It's been a bit obscured with all the funding that came in from state and federal during COVID, and those created years of spending and fund balances that kind of, I won't say cover, but it kind of covered up the real problem. We didn't experience these shortfalls. We're back to where we were. This compounds it. The fire compounds it, knowing that we need fire. We absolutely need to have them. The cost is what it is. So now it's compounding the problem of our revenues not keeping up with expenditures in the general fund and then needing to put more towards a priority of public safety, specifically fire.
So why, if the SAFER grant is the bulk of the problem, I mean, it's not the only problem, it's the bulk of the issue that we're facing, why can't we re-up the SAFER grant? Why is that ending and we have no opportunity to renew it?
I'm looking to see
I mean,
if Andy
seems, and I see
and I
Andy's
see him
coming
coming up.
But it seems like it is existential to our fire protection as we have it right now. So why would the state not recognize? I mean, look at what we're talking about. There's projections about how many engines and how we can function without engines and stations. Obviously, this is fundamental to the fire services that we're providing. Is there any recognition from that on the state level?
The SAFER grant is a federal grant through FEMA.
Yeah,
I understand. Just to be clear, the SAFER grant comes out as long as it's funded by Congress and signed by the president, and the budget is funded every year. We have historically applied for it just about every year, and we plan to keep applying for it as it goes on. Okay. Again, it's a huge grant. There's, I think, 38,000 fire departments applied for $350 million or something like that, with total requests for over $9 billion. So it's
so total requests for $9 billion out of how much money?
350 million was available.
So 350 million for $9 billion in requests. Okay.
There's a lot of competition.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. And that's my questions.
Great, thank you. I only had a few quick questions. Do we break out A87s by departments in terms of charges, how those charges are done, and not just how much each are paying, but how that amount is calculated?
That is done through Donnie's office with a consultant on an annual basis.
Okay, is that a document that can be sent to me and the board and folks? Because I've heard that I haven't been able to find out how we actually do some of the direct and indirect costs and compare them to make sure it's the same.
Yeah, it's prepared with a consultant and then approved by the state controller. So it's online, but I can definitely get it for you.
Okay, fantastic. Maybe comment / question. It's with PERS. I see 3 major categories. We could break it down, public safety to not public safety, but really it's the classic PERS for hospital staff. Then we have the era of non-hospital staff classic PERS, and then we have the post-PEPRA. Because I'll tell you, my retirement at 5 years is not driving that unfunded mandate. It's garbage. It's really not good for what this is. It's completely different compared to what the pensions were offered, 10 years ago. So I don't think there's anything on that, but I would really love to see our debt broken down into, I think we're cost mindful of what we're taking on right now. We offer pensions. It's part of the cost of employment. People do the work at the county. So being skeptical of it's good, but it's a component of that. But understanding that a lot of those minimum payments and that unfunded liability is from, I guess I can't say how much is from that hospital and how much is from classic employees versus like a new hire or a grant position that's getting a PEPRA basically pension.
If I could, I'd like to kind of just speak to that. So pre-2013, the difference between PEPRA and non-PEPRA is 2%. If you're classic, it's 2% for every year you work on the 12 highest months of your salary. PEPRA is 2% of every year you work at the highest 36 months. So it's an average of a 36 month. That's the difference. The retirement is still the 2%. The difference between now we have a tier 2 as well. Our tier 2 don't get the 0.45 or 0.49 of EPMC. So I just want to make sure we're talking the same thing. The other difference between the pre-PEPRA is that 2% was at 2% at 55, whereas the PEPRA is 2% at 62. They also changed your safety. I just want to make sure that it's not a huge difference.
Yeah, and it's only getting in the weeds. I want at some level, and maybe what I kind of phrased was not the right way, but to break down that debt, to understand what is past debt that we're kind of dealing with that's no longer the situation versus what we are doing as an employer with hires and folks right now. I want to know what that wave looks like and when that's going to hit and then when that's going to start going down. Even a very basic actuarial on that I think would be helpful. Wanted to ask, do we have the capability to separate the TOT line item within the general fund?
It is separated now.
Right, and be able to report out basically where we spend that. I know it's within the general fund, but
Your board could tell us wherever you want it to go and where for any of those line items, yes.
Okay. And then I did have one question. Seems like we're paying a lot for copiers.
Yes, we are, and
I'd like us to review that because I know we have one here for the board. There's one over there. It's great. It's right next to my office. It's 10 feet. That one's 20 feet. I can manage 20 feet. There might be opportunities to consolidate some of that, but 190,000 for copiers for leasing seems just.
well, yeah, and remember it's a number of copies people are making.
Yeah.
Some people print out like everything on the agenda and you come in with a stack like this every single board meeting. That starts adding up.
Yeah, but he's
The
not
more
here anymore.
it's
I'm
not
just
just him, but I mean, the more electronic use we do, the less we'll have in copier. So it's
Right.
more than just the lease, is what I'm saying.
And my only last thing was just trying to get to maybe what we want to highlight. It'd be really helpful to separate what are longevity, step, and benefit increases that really is not an action of what we're doing. That's just so where pay and salaries or benefits are going up, but that's with approved positions with approved contracts as it is versus, for example, it's got the listed position growth from the general fund. Not all of those, I think, are positions where we had a board discussion and increased it there, or the percentage growth in the salaries and benefits, what we would decide would be within more of a bargaining scope, or if we changed those benefits. But if somebody gets a step increase or longevity because they're staying with the county longer, which is often a good thing, right? That's not the same kind of thing as the board basically taking action. So it'd be really helpful if there's some way to separate out those categories of salary and benefit increases.
Donnie says he's going to see if he can get that out of the system. Our system does not provide that type of reporting, but he's going to see what he can do.
Donnie, I believe in you. All right. With that, so we've gone through a round of questions there.
Supervisor Brandon?
Yes.
Can I ask a follow-up that you touched on?
Sure, yeah.
So I asked about the TOT as well, and maybe I didn't understand the response, but my question was, how much of the TOT goes where?
Mm-hmm.
And so I was curious, I think you touched on it. My question is that if we bring in X million dollars of TOT, it goes into the general fund, how much of that is going to the sheriff's budget, going to all these other departments? And is that trackable?
Well, the only way we could get to that is the TOT as a percentage of your general revenues, and then to putting that as a percentage of what's being used to cover that net county cost of each department. Because we do it as a whole. So we take that full 67 million and we start plugging those net county costs. So
Supervisor, because I've had the same, it comes up all the time. The way the proposal was to voters puts it in the general fund. Now, within the general fund, we have it in its own line item. The general fund is spent as that, so we could say, well, a percentage of its TOT. We do have the ability, basically on paper, to put that in its own line and then say, well, we're allocating to, let's say, only law enforcement and fire and roads. Those are the only three, right? But we would then be deducting the other general fund deduction or amount from the rest of the budget. So all TOT, we could say then, is only going to those three, but it ends up being kind of the same. And it creates a real trust issue because people think it's not going to those things, but it's just a matter of how we track and allocate.
No, I understand. And if you use the homeowners association, everybody pays their monthly dues and that goes into a general pot. And if that gets spread out over the different amenities, if you will, so if one amenity comes up short, we have to offset that and break even. I get that. So that was kind of my question is how do we, because a lot of people think the TOT goes to a very specific place. Mm-hmm. And if it's not going to where it's supposed to be going because of these other issues that we have to address, then that's something I think we should get out there and let people know, hey, look, it's not like we're just, to use Ryan's analogy, all on black, at the roulette table, that we're actually using it where it's supposed to be going when we can.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Supervisor Griefer, if I can just chime in really quickly, one of the things about the TOT, as Supervisor Brandon was pointing out, is how it was voted. And so it is a general revenue, and that's why it goes into the general fund the way it is. That means your board every year when you're doing the budget has discretion on where it goes. So we just want to be really careful because the voters voted on it to be general, that we don't do anything that makes it a special tax, because if so, then the vote is a higher requirement. And that's kind of one of the things we talk about, I think, every year about the budget and how to address TOT.
And I totally appreciate that. I wasn't saying that we are not doing what we're supposed to be doing. I just want to make sure that the people listening and the people out there know that we're following their wishes.
Well,
And I just wanted to add, sorry, go.
I would also just say, there's a reason why it's called a transient occupancy tax and not something like a tourist tax or, an offset tax for law enforcement. It's transient occupancy. So the theory and why it was created by statute was that we have transient residents who are staying in a hotel room. Now that whoever's staying in that hotel room changes from day to day, but that hotel room is occupied, and in theory, whoever is staying there is using county services, all county services, and they're not paying property taxes. So it's in the legislature envisioned transient occupancy taxes as a type of property tax for people that live in your county in a transient capacity. So think of it as just like we pay our property taxes for everything that's in the general fund. That's what a transient occupancy tax is designed for, is to be a general tax on non-residents who still consume services through the county.
Thank you. And supervisors, I know we have a lot of items. We went through and we're all able to make comments. What I was hoping to do is we can questions, thank you. Go to public comment, any staff comment with it, then bring it back for discussion. So maybe put a tab in this and we can bring that back if we'd like to talk about it more. Is that okay? Okay, question's fine. I just want to keep the questions
And I
now
have
and then.
a final question regarding the TOT text. So
Okay, a one and a one, and then I want to
I
do
know.
the public and staff.
This is a big
Okay.
item, the most important thing that we do as a board, so I appreciate the quick opportunity. I need to clearly understand what I brought up about the governmental funds, because like Supervisor Campbell said, he's kind of thinking one way, I'm thinking another way. Is there no benefit to being in a governmental fund? Is it just a visual thing, or is there no sort of like savings rollover? Like because under the same argument, does that mean I could take American Rescue Plan, Department of Social Services, supportive housing, behavioral health, could I grab those and pull them into general fund?
The accounting wouldn't change though for them. I'm trying to think, I mean, there's still special revenue funds. You would still do the accounting the same, meaning how you're going to spend. I wouldn't recommend it, but there has always been, this idea, if you're not in the general fund, stay out of the general fund. If you're in the general fund, you're going to have to balance. And that's been the mindset of departments for a long time. So could you, I would say.
There's no savings, there's no.
You would have to do the same thing you're doing because of the rules of engagement that they have with their funding, both state and federal cost report allocations. There would not be any savings.
Okay. Then why now are we talking about bringing fire into
It was
general fund?
just an option for the board to consider, as we are now having to put more and more towards fire than we've ever done in the past. And the idea that right now, a lot of the conversations that are happening, especially in our department head meeting, is the us and them. And if you want public safety to all be within one fund and eliminate the us and them, that might be a way to do it. That's all.
Okay.
It doesn't change anything but the optics.
Okay, thank you. Supervisor Griefer?
That's it.
Thank you, sir. My only TOT follow-up to that is we have a number of large organizations operating with our county that does not pay TOT. Camp Blue, Berkeley Camp, San Jose Camp. Right, so these are large camping areas, especially on the 120 corridor up high in the mountaintops up there that are consuming resources there. They have medical calls, they have fire calls, they have those things. So if we're going to look at additional TOT, I think we as an organization should request and look at those other camps and say, hey, time to pay up.
Appreciate that. All right, and so I would like to just end the comment or I keep saying that, question period of this, open up to public comment. Any members of the public that would like to speak, please come up to the podium for 3 minutes. I will then open it up for general staff comment afterwards, so you can come up without having to be called on. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Just really quickly on TOT, this is something I researched the history on, and from the beginning it was put in place to offset public safety primarily, and that's why it was narrowed down to certain businesses. And I know it's morphed over time. It's become a revenue generator broadly across all the counties and cities. So its intent is, I think, for you guys to figure out what should the intent be for TOT? What should that be? And I think Supervisor Griefer had a point right on, which is that we need to be really clear with the public and set expectations as to why it exists and what that benefit is. Just input. Thanks.
Thanks, Tom. Do we have any other public comment in the room? All right, got one. Good afternoon.
Yes, it is. Thank you. I agree with Supervisor Campbell. This actually, I thought was pretty well done. I could actually follow it and see things, and I didn't feel like I was watching the coconut shell shuffle. So congratulations on that. In response to Supervisor Kirk, I remember, if I remember correctly, that Groveland and Columbia, those fire engines and stations or whatever were paid for with one-time funds. So they are not sustainable. So I wasn't opposed to seeing the 2-engine, 3-engine reduction because they weren't designed to be sustainable at the time you allocated that funding. And I've been sitting here for, I think it's going on 10 years now, And every year it seems like we're coughing up another $1 million to give to fire. I agree with Supervisor Brandon. I'm going $190,000 for copier leases, so I think you're right. And then when you did the last TOT, you included campgrounds. So I believe all the campgrounds are now paying TOT.
Great, thank you. Any other public comment? Okay, open it up. Also, if any staff would like to make a comment, again, this is just without being called on, related to your areas. Don't feel compelled, but it's an opportunity before we go into discussion. Sheriff, welcome. I mean, you've been here all day.
Good afternoon. Dave Vasquez, Sheriff of Tuolumne County. Thank you, everybody, for the hard work, staff putting together this presentation. You have to forgive me as I'm flipping through some notes. I received this morning. Just a couple of things. Thank you for the questions. A lot of the questions I was scratching off, the board members were asking specifically about special department revenue and things like that, and the distinctions between grant-funded and permanent positions. We already highlighted the approximate $6 million of special department revenue, not including courts. One of the things that I'd like to draw the attention to is about the growth in positions. I believe it's on slide 47. I anticipated that there might be a line or a slide that looked like this, so I wanted to bring some clarity just to ensure that everybody was on the same page. One of those positions was increased, and I think that Supervisor Griefer had asked specifically what some of these positions were. So in anticipation of that, one of them was associated with dispatch, which is also offset with revenue as well. 5 court positions paid for by the courts trust. 4 of those custody support tech positions, which are currently vacant and are permanent positions. 4 custody positions, which are currently frozen. 1 analyst and a work crew manager that is paid for out of the Community Corrections Partnership. Those are some of the positions that I kind of tallied up. The other 3 I was kind of little question mark, but I have a note by there just in case there is a need for clarification on that. There was one thing that I saw in here where it had us allocated at 79. We are actually at 75. Just double checking the math as I'm flipping through this. And again, remember, I just got this morning. Also, our boating enforcement division is comprised of 3 grant-funded positions, 1 sergeant at an 80-20%, 2 deputies at a 75%, and then 1 50-50, if I'm getting that correct. Trying to keep all these numbers straight in my head. During this presentation, there was a comment that I would like to reflect on and add some clarity. I believe in being very, very direct and open with the public about participation. There was a comment made about 2 individuals not participating with projections associated with what this whole process has been. The public has a right to know that I'm one of those individuals. This process has caused me some concern stemming from the beginning of November, where I had a very strongly worded conversation about the public's participation in government. I'm very grateful that those words were received, but nonetheless, it does put me in a position where I did not feel that I could fully participate until this day, having the conversation take place. So I just want everybody to know that the public's participation in their government, especially when it has to do with anything associated with my office and the services that we provide to the people, I will always advocate that that has to come to this board first, so that way you can execute the full scope of your authority and allow the people to participate. I'm also very grateful for our county council for assisting and making sure that the process has moved forward as I was metabolizing certain conversations and information in a way that did not make me feel comfortable. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other staff comment? Going once, going twice. Oh, there we go. Chief, welcome.
Good afternoon. I'll be brief. I just wanted to add a little clarification as regards to the allocated positions question. Just a couple of extra points of clarification that weren't already brought up.
And if I can interrupt too, whenever I have a staff, especially for the first few meetings, introduce yourself.
I'm sorry.
There
Dan
we go.
Hawks, Chief Probation Officer, Tuolumne County.
Thank you.
Thank you. And it was a great presentation, by the way. It was very, very good job clarifying many things. I just wanted to point out a couple of points. Since 1987, there have been significant public safety and social services realignments from the state level, where a lot of duties were shoved back onto counties. And so that, I think, will account for some of those positions that were created. And, there's corresponding revenue that tracks that. It may not always match up, but as the state's gotten out of certain practices, they've expected counties to pick those things up. And so that would account for some of those allocated positions increasing. Another factor I just wanted to mention was with the CalPERS reforms, CalPEPRA, other reforms, we were limited in our use of retired annuitants. Our department in particular used to rely heavily on part-time retired annuitants to do a lot of work, and it no longer became feasible for us to rely on those retired annuitants with the changes that came from the state. So I just wanted to mention that. I know we had to lay off at least 7 employees over the years that were working for us in a part-time capacity, and at a huge savings as well. So I just wanted to bring that up. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Appreciate it. Hello.
Hello again. Cassandra Jenneke, your district attorney for Tuolumne County. Piggybacking off of something that Dan just mentioned, and it was actually something that Supervisor Kirk brought up at the workshop last week, is that when we think about how public safety funding and how public safety staffing has changed over the last 2 decades, it's important to note some benchmark times. So for all county government, the 2008 Great Recession is a huge point in time for us to mark about how that's going to affect and how it affected our ability to provide services to the community. Next, for public safety, most particularly, was AB 109 realignment and Prop 47. So when you look at 2011, 2012, you're going to see some benchmark changes after that point. And that is particularly because things like supervision of felons being released from state prison, some of those folks were realigned to the probation department. Handling all parole violation hearings transferred to my office from the Board of Parole hearings, and having those folks be out on the streets faster, that becomes a public safety issue for our sheriff's office to address. Something in looking at the staffing in my office that I think is important for you to understand is that prior to 2016, we had one victim witness grant fund, and that was our victim witness prosecution grant. Had that for over 30 years at that point. It funded 3 positions in my office. Victim witness services are constitutionally mandated by the state of California. This county, as far back as I can tell, has never once paid for a full position out of general fund funded costs for victim witness until AB 109 hit. And when AB 109 hit, my office sought a fully funded advocate position out of the Community Corrections Partnership that increased our advocacy services by 1 FTE. And then you'll see in 2016, there's this bump up. This is total allocated staff positions for our office. In 2016 and 2017, we added 2 additional grants that added at least 4, but up to 5 additional positions in victim witness for us. And so when you see that increase in staffing, a lot of that is attributable to grant funds and our ability to offer a more diverse series of services to our folks that are specific to their needs, like adding the Sunshine Child Advocacy Center and adding a elder protection program through our office specific for our elder population. And so I bet every single department head could talk to you about the nuances of our staffing and how increases and decreases have affected our ability to provide services to the people of Tuolumne County. And so I would urge you, not just for public safety, but for all of your departments, to really investigate how that staffing is integral to our operations. We also, Sheriff Vasquez mentioned it, but we received this presentation in some form about a week ago, but in this form today, this morning. And that's also when your public received it, which, despite the quality of the presentation, is unacceptable. It's a lot of information for us to internalize, for us to digest, and for us to have meaningful conversations about. I understand from Supervisor Kirk's comment that you all probably received it before I did, or we did collectively. And so I appreciate that you all are coming at this from an informed perspective. But to the extent that it was offered, perhaps not all of us are. And so to keep that in mind, as you move back towards the last page of this presentation, which is next steps, your department heads were all asked to be here today, in case any of you had any questions. I I think that a lot of us are here with the hopes that we're going to hear some direction from all of you about what the next 6 months for us are going to look like, about what your priorities are, about what the next series of years are going to look like. Because the reality is that if you are going to choose to prioritize some things over others, other things are going to have to give. And that direction comes from all of you. And so I am eager to participate with you in that process, eager to hear your leadership in that arena, and looking forward to what the next steps look like. Thank you.
Great, thank you. All right. So with that, bring it back to the board. I'm going to step in on one comment really quick here. So it is nearly 12:30. Mentioned that it was planning that if this is a quick item, we can work through lunch and then we can be able to basically go into our closed session and have that discussion. So this is up to, I think, the interest of the board. We do have the opportunity to give direction today, ask more questions, have more discussion. I think this is a first, but not the only one. I think a lot of this was to provide us info. I think we're going to be having a lot of meetings about our priorities coming up. So my recommendation would be any follow-up technical questions on what was presented. We reach out to staff and get answers through that way. That through that survey process, we take all those ideas, feedback, questions, all of it, send it in, and within hopefully 2, maybe 3 weeks, we have that priority review. That's where we are going to have specific, tangible direction with department head items, ourselves, and staff. And lastly, that the main direction we would give from this meeting is that there will be a financial focus for your budget for the next upcoming year. And so a lot of our decisions and direction to our staff would be to think in terms of revenue, cost recovery, efficiency, modernization, et cetera. That would be my recommendation. We keep our discussion here short so that we're able to do that in 2 or so weeks and move to our closed session. Anyway, I'll open it up to the board. Supervisor Kirk.
I'll make a comment, but I just want to be clear. What's your recommendation on priority moving forward? You said something about send recommendations in.
Sure.
Can you clarify? Because I mean, I just want to be clear.
Yeah, staff and department heads, I believe, have already provided comments, ideas on priorities, efficiencies, et cetera. After today's meeting, that will be sent to us, so we're able to submit that to staff. Staff can consolidate. That can be resubmitted out to make sure we all are able to weigh in on what are priorities for us to explore. And I'm hoping a week and then a week. So within 2, maybe 3 weeks, we're then able to do our mid-year priority review. So as you know, we're in the middle of a 2-year priority list, and that would be taking some stuff off and adding stuff more specifically.
There's a survey that's been done that's going to be presented to us as board members?
So, yes, I was asked to put out 2 different types of questionnaires. One was to department heads about efficiency as ideas, anything that would generate revenue, something similar to all staff. That went out as an email. We did it as an anonymous type of survey. I think we had 70 or 80, was it close to 100 responses so far?
Great.
Only, I think I have to check my email again. I think I only had a few department heads, but I just sent it out this, was it Monday?
Okay.
Maybe yesterday. I can't remember when you asked. Maybe it was Friday. So there hasn't been a lot of time for them to think about that and respond.
The goal being get quickly to an action priority session and have a bunch of ideas.
I'm fine with that coming into us, because one of my recommendations on here was have a quick check-in on priorities moving forward. Not do a whole workshop. I think we can do it in a couple hours. For example, we have 4. I have 4 priorities in front of me, and I think we need to quickly, I guess, perhaps take that and then see if it matches with what we want to do. But so I'm fine with that, especially if that process has already been started. But with that being said, let me jump into, because part of it too is giving direction on this. Thank you, Tracy, Liz, everybody who's involved with this process. I know we had the trends and projection thing back in July, and that was the beginning, and it's gone big, and I feel like we're getting all the dirty details. And then, so for me moving forward, I'll go through just to clarify a few things I want to see added, but I think we're 99% of the way there. And then just moving forward, I kind of want this to be continual, but then have just kind of a bigger just summary moving forward. Like I don't need to go through all 100 pages next time, like maybe a 10-page summary for each quarter. What's that? No, it's part of it. We have to get there. So I'm going to read these off. I brought it up. I'm just going to check it off. Merge forecasts with trends on all charts. So any chart where there's a trend, put a put a forecast with it. Number 2, updated sheet on fire contract employees, PERS or not, liability, basically a little bit of a dive into fire. Number 3 is going to be, if we're given direction, my recommendation is no grants or no employment over a 5-year grant period without board approval. And I need to also no grants unless it's to serve the department core services. And then also review of grant position benefits versus similar employees. I've heard rumor that granted positions are compensated or benefits package are much better than same or similar employees. I kind of want to look at that. But the gist of it is, I don't have the data in this presentation to understand the PERS liability for grants. I kind of want that. And then in the meantime, I don't think we should be having an employment over 5 years to keep that liability from blowing up unless the board gives approval on it. So that's number 3. Number 4 is I want to do this 3 times a year. First, I said quarterly, but unless you guys have a better recommendation, I'm looking for board support on to do this exercise before budget, before adopt the budget, and then before bargaining. I'd like to do this exercise. Number 5 would be to add the sheriff to the governmental fund, just like fire. I hear that there is this us versus them, and there's a comment made in the community today that fire was not a long-term plan, that they're okay losing services. I'll tell you personally, ladies and gentlemen, I did not get elected to come here and play the game of all ships are equal. LA has burnt to shit. Okay? Fire is our number 1 priority. And as long as I'm a board member, I'm going to fight that we lose 0 engines and perhaps gain engines. 2, law enforcement is right there beside them. So I think we should put fire and law enforcement in the governmental fund. If you don't enjoy working for Tuolumne County and you think it's us versus them, then you can leave. Because the day is coming where our budget will not support that argument any longer. Fire and law enforcement are our number 1 constitutional obligations, and I'm looking for support from this board to see that through.
Can I just ask for clarification? Are you saying you want to move the sheriff's office out of the general fund into its own fund?
Yes.
Thank you.
Supervisor Kirk, thank you for
Well,
the
I'm
comments.
not done. Hold on. I got 2 more.
I
Number
only
6.
wanted to see if, for the rest of the board members, it's purely administrative. Do we want to all be able to each give comments, direction, do votes on some of these items today? And this is in terms of lunch and scheduling. Or do we want to basically have this process and save that for when we do the priority review? And I'd like to hear from that, and then I'll return to you, Supervisor Kirk.
Sure.
I didn't mean to interrupt,
No,
but
you're fine.
I have to.
2 minutes.
Yeah.
Less than 2.
Okay, so you're pretty quick. Supervisor Griefer?
I'm with him, and I
Very
would
quick.
support, if we wanted to bring a motion forward, like he said, his item number 4, I didn't write it down. I could buy into that, so.
I'm going to go for 1 minute just to beat Mike.
Okay.
Supervisor Campbell?
I'll take a little time, I'm not sure.
Okay.
But I just want to hear what everybody has to say, and then I can go next, or
Then let's
Steve
power
or Mike can
through.
go next, either.
And
I got 2 more. I'll be 30 seconds.
Yeah, Supervisor Kirk.
Number 6 is all electeds and department heads will be included in this process moving forward. It will not come to them prior to its adoption. And part of number 6 is the board will receive this a week prior to it being presented. I got it last night. Number 7, summarize this with board priorities. One thing that really stood out to me in this budget, and it's a good exercise. I want to make this very simple because we're getting a lot of information. We need to prioritize immediately what our priorities are. We have a sheet right here: fire and public safety, community health and prosperity, infrastructure, roads, employment excellence. This job should really be taking place by the 4th floor in the organization. I would like to make it very clear, and we need to have a priority session, which is, for me, fire, public safety, infrastructure, roads, bridges, facilities, parks. Then that 10-page summary is how are you going to fund our board priorities? Just keep those whole, and then we can have another conversation about what the rest of the organization looks like. But I would like to stop arguing what our priorities are and fund our priorities in a meaningful way and create our budget around those priorities. So those would be my 7 recommendations. 4 was simply the timeline before budget, before adopted budget, and before bargaining to do this exercise, just to be clear. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Who'd like to go next? Supervisor Griefer, Supervisor
mine's
Campbell
real-
then, and
Mine are really simple. I'll support number 4, no problem. I have no issues where I would like to see fire and SO lumped in together, as we discussed a moment ago. To me, it's always like the cart's before the horse, right? We're trying to figure out what our priorities are. We're trying to figure out what the budget is and then what our priorities are. I think we're completely ass backwards. I think we need to say, these are our priorities. This is how much it's going to cost. Let's get there. And how do we get to that number? And so I think we as an organization need to really come up with the review process. I'm good with that 3 times a year, as you said, things like that. But I think we need to know what our priorities are as a government agency. And then for me is long-term planning, right? I've not heard what's the long-term planning. I brought this up earlier. What's the goals of this organization when it comes to the health of our buildings? Things like that. We need to make sure that, at least for me, I can't find anywhere that says in the next 5 years, we're going to fix this building, this building, this building, and how much is it going to cost. We haven't said, we know that the air conditioners need to be replaced, right? Are we going to replace them all at once or piecemeal them over time and things like that? Do we have the money set aside for this? Government, as I said before, from 1776 until now, builds it and they forget about it. And we need to just stop throwing money into a hole and say, oh, well, we'll worry about it when we get down, when it comes time to replace the air conditioning or things like that. I really want to see a very specific plan that says in the next 10 years, we're going to address these buildings or these facilities or this issue so we have the money set aside. Thank you.
Supervisor Campbell.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry. So I really don't understand some of the comments about we need to figure out what our priorities are. If you look at, the sheriff's office, we have better staffing, higher wages for sheriff's deputies, hiring bonuses, much more than we've ever had to support law enforcement. We have more fire stations and fire engines and newer equipment and better staffing in our TCF than we have ever had. We have more funds set aside in reserves than we have ever had. So I think there's no question about where the priorities of this board lie. And so I don't understand why we're talking about how we need to change priorities or that it's not clear what our priorities are. Because to me, they're quite clear what they are, and that it is public safety and that it is these things that we have already been putting resources into. The question is that we have prioritized these things beyond a place where we have the revenues to support them into perpetuity. And to me, that's very indicative of what we're looking at with the SAFER grant. Now, we haven't been just sitting on our hands since we got the SAFER grant. We have asked the voters to approve a tax measure to help backfill some of the cost for that and for law enforcement. We've done that multiple times. We've looked at making cuts in a variety of areas. But the fact is we're at a point now where we have to really narrow down the areas where we have to cut. And to me, that area is that $3 million for the SAFER grant. Now, that isn't the end of it, but that's the biggest single thing that we're looking at. I think a lot of these things are not, I wouldn't call them a crisis. It's kind of just general working within the confines of a economically disadvantaged rural community. But the SAFER grant, to me, is a crisis. The fact that we are losing that in 1 year, and it is over $3 million, and it is directly supporting our fire stations that I think our community has come to depend on. If you look at what's happening, and it sounds a little bit callous, but what's happening in LA right now is kind of at the high end of normal for a catastrophic fire. It's far smaller than what happened during a Camp Fire, Mendocino Complex, all of these extremely destructive fires. It is not an accident that we have avoided that similar fate. It's because we have invested in things like fire protection and first responder services. So we cannot take our foot off the gas when it comes to that. And that's just something that I believe in, and it's where I stand on that. I'm pretty serious about it, very serious about it. The other comment, and Supervisor Kirk, I may have misunderstood where you're going with, but your discussion about the number of grant-funded positions we have in the county. To me, it's a little bit reductive to say that we shouldn't take on any more grant-funded positions, because there may not be a direct connection, but if you look at like the MSA, if you look at these CCI grants that we had for fuels reduction, that is directly where these programs like Zero, like fuels management projects, that is where they come from. And so if we had not had these, so for the cost of benefits and some ancillary costs connected with these grant-funded programs, we're getting millions and millions of dollars poured into this county for fuels reduction, and things like the SAFER grant would not have happened because of grant-funded positions. And to me, that the only way economically disadvantaged county like ours can operate is with grant-funded. Now, you and I have talked, and I think I agree with you. I'm not a big proponent of, I hate the grant-funded system that exists in California, but it is the system that exists, and so we have to work within it. I think to close our eyes and say, we're not going to accept any more grants and grant-funded positions because we don't like the state exerting control, that we're cutting off our nose to spite our face if we do that. I would almost look at how can we leverage some of these duties that we're doing in-house into grant-funded positions. I would almost prefer that, because at the end of the day, it costs less and we're getting more utility out of it. Even though it's not zero cost, but it is less cost. And I'm sorry, I really do have a different perspective. I think that I think it's important for the Board of Supervisors to have oversight in all general fund departments. And to me, I am more in favor of bringing something like TCF into the general fund rather than creating carve-outs for sheriff and fire, because we need to be honest with ourselves about where the money goes. And if we do have to make cuts to support the things that are important to us, we need to be clear about that. And by making carve-outs for different departments, I don't see that it really accomplishes anything except making it more complicated and convoluted and a little more opaque in the minds of voters about how we're spending our money. If everybody's in the same pot and we have a big bag of money with a big dollar sign on it, and we have to pour that bag into the pot and then decide what goes in and what comes out, to me that is the simplest and most elegant way that it works, and it doesn't skirt our authority and our responsibility in that process. That we are being clear about where that money should be spent, and I'm perfectly willing to make the hard decisions and hard choices, and be completely open about that. But all that being said, my main number one priority is looking at that $3.2 million that we are not going to have in 2026. That, to me, that's a crisis. It's something we've done a lot of things to try and find a way out of it, but we haven't been successful up to this point. We got to figure out whether SAFER grant can be replaced with something else, and if not, what are we going to do to backfill that? I almost don't want to talk about anything else until we get that figured out, because if we're talking about 100,000 here and 100,000 there, it's not going to get us where we need to go when we have more than $3 million sitting out there that we have to come up with. So that's my number one priority in terms of figuring out the budget. So anyway, those are my comments.
Thank you. Supervisor Holland?
Okay, I'll try to keep it short. And I asked earlier what our expenses increase were, so I did some quick math. It was 83 million last year. It's going to be 96 million 2025. That's a 16% increase, roughly. I think everyone's alluded to it. We can sit here and keep cutting parts, but eventually you run out of body parts to cut off. And as I said, it's a going out of business model. We should be talking and focusing on how we're growing to increase our revenues, and we wouldn't be having these discussions if we had more money. So things like Tracy said, we don't get the Amazon or Wayfair money anymore. So one day they're going to show up and want to be here, and we need to have open arms ready to go and want them to come here for business. And so it's easy to say, well, we don't want any growth at all, but we need to have responsible growth. If we do not, this room's going to get very thin very fast, because we'll be down to running some sheriffs and some fire, and that'll be it. There'll be no general services, there'll be GSI, there'll be no GIS, there'll be nothing else. Because eventually that will absorb the whole budget without growth. Because you can see our expenses are outpacing the revenue by a ridiculous amount of money. So that has to change. And I think we have to change our mindset how we get out of there. It's going to take time. I mean, businesses just aren't going to show up. Growth's not going to show up. But we need to plant the seeds, water them today. So 10 years from now, somebody looks back and said, thank God the current board or the board back then did this. Because now we're in a better position. So that's all I got.
Great, thank you.
That's a minute and a half, Jaron.
All right, now I got to beat him.
Supervisor Rayleigh, can I just jump in one final?
Jump
I
in.
just want to address a comment you made. I want to make it clear that I'm not saying that the board hasn't prioritized. I just want to make sure that now that we're at a certain level, that we don't keep moving forward. It's still it's a priority that was then, and it's a priority now. So I'm not saying that we're not prioritizing. I just want to make sure we never lose sight that they are a priority, even where we're at now. That's to address that point.
Thank you.
And then I gotta.
All right, Supervisor Kirk.
Real quick, just because we're having a good conversation here, I just want to be very clear on a few things. Our board the past board has made huge investments in law enforcement and fire, but we did that with free money. The hard conversation is, what do you do when that free money runs out? And that's where we're at right now. So that's why it's so important that I think we reevaluate our priorities, and we do that very quickly. When it comes to the MSA, I want to be very clear. I don't know if I was clear in here, but my direction or my thought on the grant thing is, I said no grant will be approved unless it's part of the department's core services or if it's approved by the board. So things like the MSA, I'll tell you right now, of course I'd approve it because it's the economics that it brings and how it fits with fire and protection. What I'm saying is there may be grants out there that we have to take a hard look at because I don't have the data, but I need to know what that liability is and is it worth the cost. So that's what just the clarification is on the grant thing. And then on the SAFER grant, I hear you. Maybe there's going to be money set aside by the governor's office in wake of LA now that the rich and famous are having, their multi-million-dollar pads ruined. Now maybe there's going to be some more funding. So hopefully that would be great. My concern is we are already 4 or 5 months behind on doing cuts or having these conversations. So I would hope that the SAFER grant could be saved, but I'm not waiting for it. And I would just recommend that we don't, but that we do fight to continue it, but that we move forward as if it's not going to be there. So those are just my comments based on what you said.
Great, thank you. So my comments, the direction I'd like to leave for the end of this meeting, hopefully from the board, is that generally for the next year, we have a huge focus to make it the year of budget, the year of growth and revenue growth, and the year of modernization. And we need to frame everything in terms of that. We have a lot of priorities beyond the 4 categories, specific ones. It's a matter of not deciding what's important, but what's not important, and that's very hard. In line with that, I'd like to see every member of the board calculate out from what we've been presented here today, and I'm doing the same myself. What would we like to be able to protect if the SAFER grant is expiring? We've done expenses here. We want to put money into roads and PERS. Calculate a number, and then that's where we got to start figuring out what we cut, what we do cost recovery. A lot of these options haven't been chosen because they're not always popular. They're going to be very hard decisions. We've gone through a few already, and I think we're going to keep doing that. And I think that will reflect our priorities, but it will be a good way to do it. So I'm happy we have this survey review process. I want as many ideas submitted. I appreciate all the staff that have submitted to it as well. It's important to me that you might be at the bottom new hire of the totem pole, but if you're filling out a paper form and it sucks and you do that 5 times a day and you think you could do it faster, or you're using a software system that's older than me, I want to hear about that. And I think we can make decisions based on the info that we get. And so that's really important. Same with our department heads. You know what is the most feasible and practical. I know I'm going over, Mike, but it's good stuff. So please participate in that. Board members participate in that. And I'm hoping that'll come back with more specifics because we do need to take action and we do need to take it fast. And I agree with Supervisor Kirk's comments. A lot of that's going to be with the priorities. Hope we'll be working through with staff and committees, all 5 of us, in all areas of the county to basically identify these, questioning everything, encouraging innovation, being very strong on this, but also very thoughtful. Because as was mentioned, there's a lot of nuance to these positions, how they're funded, what they do, who else relies on them. We'll have to make cuts, but we have to do so with, we don't want to have unintended consequences worse than what we're trying to necessarily do. And we inherited a lot of crap in my term when I got elected. Supervisor Kirk and Supervisor Campbell inherited a lot of crap when they got elected too. So you too are inheriting a lot of crap as well. Unfortunately, we're in a hard spot with the state, and we're in a hard spot with previous board decisions. I hope you'll look kindly on a lot of the ones we did to try and increase revenue, increase reserves, and be more financially stable. But we're all in it together. We still got a lot of problems. So I only wanted to say, well, welcome to the circus. It's a bit of a challenge. So with that, if there's any further comments, do we need any direction on some items?
Yeah, I just want to make sure the board is clear on what you're asking. And so what Supervisor Brandon's idea is that you would submit any ideas you have, cost savings, revenue, whatever. If you can get those to me, we'll go through and compile a list along with the survey that went out, and then we can get that back to the board for review. And we can meet individually as well to go over that kind of stuff. I'm also happy to meet with you individually to vet some of your some of your ideas and other types of direction that you have, just to better understand where you're going.
Personally, I would recommend, a question was brought up on timing. I would like to see, this is my sandbox, a week for us to fill out that survey and send it in, and then have that digested and sent back out to then put the priorities. So we know roughly where the board's at, most folks. That will all be anonymous and worked through with staff. When that comes back, hopefully in 2 weeks, we then know what stuff has the most support and where it's kind of coming from, and we can make some priority decisions. At that point, I hope we can do a paper cut, eliminating maybe some of the priorities we no longer want to continue that are on our priority list currently, and any of the ones that we might like but is not really feasible right now. And from there, we should have a list of what do we support, what do we want to look into, and we can start putting that into a timeline.
Can I ask for clarification on the priorities? We have 4 right in front of us, but I know we had a chart with things in progress, things that were on halt. Will we have an update? I mean, should we go as granular as saying, hey, we think we should stop this, continue this? Are we going to get that into the weeds with it?
It'll be up to the board, but personally, I think so. The reason being, what we're all talking about is going to take time and resources, which means we got to create time and resources because we already filled that up before.
Okay, so that will go out to us as well? An
Yes,
updated
I think
version?
we can get that to you.
Yeah. Do we have any further discussion? And staff, do we need any direction on some items? I know a couple things were brought up by board members.
I don't.
Or
We'll come
wait
back
for
with a
2 weeks,
compiled
maybe.
list of what that looks like. We'll start doing some calculations, we'll need some further direction, yes. But I think right now, what it sounds like with your idea of wanting to kind of get a collection of everything from department heads, employees, board members for you to review. We started a list on our office of different areas we have for recommendations that you could consider. So we'll have those as well.
And to Supervisor Kirk and Holland, I have a recommendation that you brought up some things on how to bring this back year after year in that. Perfect item to maybe have us send to the Finance Committee, and you can review a format of how this comes back, what info. I think that'd be a really good.
Yeah, I think once we get
item.
our priorities, once we do a few things that we need to do here, then we'll throw it on that calendar.
Great. All right. With that, I think we're good on item 12, correct? It's all great. Well, thank you for the presentation. Thank you, everybody, for attending. We have reports in the agenda, but we're going to be skipping that, I think, for today, if that's okay with everybody. And moving into closed session, if you can read the closed items, please.
Item number 13, closed session, public employee performance evaluation, Authority Government Code, Section 54957B1, titles, County Administrative Officer. Item number 14, closed session, conference with labor negotiators, Tracy Riggs, County Administrator, and Karen McGettigan, Human Resources Director / Risk Manager, Authority Government Code, Section 54957.6, all bargaining units.
Great. And to legal counsel, do we expect a report out from these? I think we may be reporting out maybe on 13, but so there's not a mandatory report out for these items. Okay, great. And we have to open public comment for these items if any members of the public would like to speak. For this is for items 13 and 14. Going once, going twice. All right, public comment's closed. Thank you, everybody. So we are adjourning the public portion of this meeting at 12:57 and going into closed session. All right, we are reconvening the Board of Supervisors. It's 4:01. This is on item 13 and 14 for our closed session. We have a report out that's going to be delivered by Liz Peterson.
Yeah, I mean, not so much a report out, but based on the conversation from this morning / this afternoon and then what was discussed in closed session, it is obvious that there needs to be some long-term cuts made. And so staff's recommendation is to look at all of the departments excluding the public safety wheel. So that would exclude the sheriff's office, all cost centers, the DA's office, public defender, probation department, juvenile hall, and animal control. So excluding those departments, that all departments should make some pretty significant cuts. So staff's recommendation is that we look at 15% for the rest of those departments. There are, of course, a bunch of other departments that can't make cuts, and we can get more into detail about that. And then staff's recommendation is that we start making cuts now, and then looking toward those being long-term permanent cuts, away from sort of the freezing positions, but more toward longer-term permanent things. But then that public safety, while they wouldn't make any cuts, there would be no growth for next year. And let's see, but then also whatever they can do to pull in additional revenue, to limit spending, to maybe halt certain spending for the next year. So if we get to, so the tricky part is, and this is where I'll need a little direction from you, 15%, we know what that will be for an entire fiscal year for those departments that are, for the departments that are included. But we do not have an entire fiscal year. So if your board, so I'll just say, we worked some numbers, and if we reduce by 15% for the specific departments, that excludes public safety and like contingencies is out and a handful of others, it would be $5.6 million that the non-public safety departments would be asked to reduce. But that's for an entire fiscal year. And so while it is staff's recommendation that departments make cuts now, they are not going to be able to make $5.6 million of cuts this year. So I'm going to need a little direction from your board about how these departments should be cutting, in the next, realistically, it's not even 6 months, it's going to be maybe in more in the neighborhood of 4 months. So that's staff's recommendation, but also looking to your board for some direction.
Great, thank you. And we're just reporting out, correct, Sarah, with that?
We're on item 12.
Reopen?
Yes.
The only concern that I have is, since we moved into close, we didn't know if we were going to have a report out. We do have a report out with this, is reopening and giving any direction when there's not the public here and staff able to present. So if there's something very specific and time pressing, willing to, but as far as a full conversation, I think the expectation we gave was that was closed. Correct me if I'm wrong, if the board wants to open up item 12 again more fully.
Supervisor, that was my understanding, is that we were opening up item 12 because what the CAO staff is doing is taking the information that you heard earlier today, along with the discussions of closed session, sort of coupling them together to come up with this recommendation. However, if you would like to have the departments be able to speak into like this, basically the last quarter of this current fiscal year, we can always schedule a special meeting to have a discussion about that piece of it.
So to clarify, it's with the staff recommendation coming forward for us to weigh in and give direction on that specifically.
Right. I mean, so, and I think even more specifically, so the 15% for next fiscal year, like confirmation on that, and that's about $5.6 million.
Right.
And then also what, if anything, you want done this current fiscal year. Because
Okay.
you're not gonna be able to get $5.6 million.
Thank you. So we will, thank you for that. We'll reopen item 12 then, if there's no opposition to it. The clerk will read the item again.
Item number 12, presentation, discussion, and direction on updated financial trends and budget projections for fiscal year 24-25 and fiscal year 25-26.
Great. And reopening this item again, as mentioned, this is, I think, fairly specific with the direction we're talking about right now for some guidance on the priority session of the budget, and hopefully keeping it limited to that. Again, I think if we're having more detailed topic-specific conversations, we want to make sure that should have probably been done earlier or at an upcoming meeting. So, okay. Supervisor Holland.
I think what Liz is looking for is 15% and then just prorate it for the remaining amount of this year, if that's what you're asking. Proportionate for what's left in time frame.
I suppose, yeah. I mean, I think that is an option to get there, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe 1/4 of that 5.6 million, if we're talking, quarters of the fiscal year.
Whatever's left on this
Yeah.
time frame.
Yeah.
And then Supervisor Campbell, and then Supervisor Griefer after.
I didn't hear you stated, so the recommendation is 15%, and excluding public safety. Was there any other, would public safety stay status quo? What would be?
I'm sorry, thank you. Yeah, so there would be no growth in public safety, but it would be status quo. Yeah, I mean, that is the same thing. No growth, status quo. But the request, or at least the recommendation, is anything that public safety can do. I know that there is some opportunities to pull in additional revenues to cover existing costs. We don't want to add additional services and pull in revenue. That doesn't, that defeats the purpose. But anything that they can do to pull in additional revenues to cover existing costs, as well as to delay expenses or anything that they may be purchasing, vehicle purchases, or some of those things that they can delay, that they would delay for 25-26.
Okay, thank you.
Supervisor Griefer? No comment. Okay, and so just to clarify, are we giving direction on both fiscal year 24-25 and 25-26, or are we just looking right now for, with staff 24-25 for the remaining with a 4/5 amendment basically?
If you can do both, I would love that. Because
Okay, so we're
as you
looking for
recall from this morning, we have to start building 25-26's budget,
Right.
In March at the earliest. And so, or really probably earlier than that. And so, any direction you can give on the development of 25-26 now would be great. That's going to help.
With that, so I think we have the questions period over. I'm going to reopen public comment on this. We do have one member of sort of public. Appreciate it.
I mean, he's wearing an Acapulco shirt.
Yeah, no, just wanted to kind of get some clarification. So we're looking at 15% cuts across all non-public safety funds in the general fund. Okay, some small departments where there's only one employee, that's like, I'm thinking the archives that does record management. I don't know how you do that. Just something to consider. We'll work with CAO's office on coming up with some solutions, but just wanted to kind of highlight some of those smaller departments.
Great, and thank you, appreciate it. Any other public comment? Okay, seeing none, bring it back to the board. So let's separate this maybe into two.
Supervisor Brandon, question.
Yes.
So I just want to make sure, so are we taking a vote now to give direction for them to work on this? Or are we saying, go back, staff, come up with this plan, and then they'll bring that back before us, so then we could address as it was just issued?
I believe we are, because I said vote, but we're giving direction to, for the current budget year, which would require anything coming back to have a 4/5 vote for an amendment. Correct me, jump in if I get anything wrong. And then for 25-26, another one to indicate the same thing. What I'm understanding is on the table is the recommendation is a 15% reduction to all general fund, non-public safety departments, a freeze within the public safety sector at the current 24-25 levels as they're at right now, and that would then be two departments to bring back basically what they're going to do to make that happen. Is that correct? And does that answer?
Yeah, it's more of a procedural, I want to
Yeah.
make sure.
So I don't think we're doing as formal as a vote, right? We can do a vote, is Sarah?
But we can do a vote.
Should we vote or should we
You
just?
can do a vote, you can
Let's do a vote then.
consensus, I mean.
Yeah.
So I'll ask for a consensus on it if that ends up, well, I guess we don't have to do roll, so we might as well do a vote. So I'll be looking for a motion. This will be on the, do we want to do it together? Let's do 24-25 budget amendment as listed with the staff recommendation, and 25-26 also is listed with the staff recommendation.
I do have a question.
Yes.
So we're saying 15% now, and then another 15% for 30%?
Just
or
to
we're
carry, just to carry it
Right,
through.
okay,
It would
just
carry
making sure.
forward.
Moving forward. And in the time, I don't know if you need notes, but the timeline on it is to bring this back within 2 weeks. Hope that's the
Yeah.
board's.
And any departments or
Desire.
staff watching too, I believe that would hopefully align pretty closely with the priority review session. And this would be happening before we start hitting the deadlines and budget. So the 2 weeks is a good time period for a lot of these conversations. So it would be looking for that motion.
I will make that motion.
Okay, motion by Supervisor Kirk. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Supervisor Holland. All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No.
Abstaining? All right, passes 4-1-0.
So just to be clear, we'll be bringing back, doing a special meeting, so just to make sure there'll be staff contacting you all to set a special meeting for that. Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Everybody